Overnight, the entire world was plunged into a paralyzing blackout and water shortage. Yet, my apartment remained brightly lit. Neighbors streamed out of their homes, grumbling in the bitter cold hallway as the temperature plummeted to minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit. They complained about the power and water outage, lamenting that we were all going to freeze to death. The sudden onset of this extreme cold left most people unprepared. They hadn't even stocked up on a single pack of ramen. If they were lucky enough to survive the cold, starvation seemed like the next inevitable fate. But I was nothing like them. Taking full advantage of my position as a warehouse manager, I had secretly stockpiled enough resources to last me 3.5 years. As I leisurely played a video game, a sudden knock at the door startled me. Pulling up the security camera feed, I saw her, Fong Yiqing, the woman I had been hopelessly crushing on for 3 years. I quickly packed a week's worth of food, ready to offer it to her. But the moment I opened the door, a horde of hundreds of neighbors burst out from behind her. They raided my stash of supplies, taking everything, and then savagely plotted to dismember me for their survival. Even the so-called goddess of mine proudly revealed her scheme to lure me into opening the door, and she claimed one of my arms as her portion. In agonizing pain, I died with hatred in my heart, vowing that if there were an afterlife, I would return and exact my revenge 100-fold. And fate granted me that chance. I was reborn. Seeing the date displayed on my phone, I realized I had gone back exactly a month before the apocalypse began. Given this new chance, I swore to live differently this time and repay every one of those traitors in kind. But first, I had to address two critical challenges: the extreme scarcity of supplies in the apocalypse and the overwhelming threats to my safety. Priority number one was clear: build an impenetrable safe house and stockpile an abundance of resources. As I contemplated my plan, a flash of blue light suddenly tore through the air in front of me, revealing an endless dimensional space. It seemed that the gamma ray burst from my past life had altered my body, unlocking extraordinary powers. Now equipped with this dimensional storage ability, I could easily hoard enough supplies to last not just 3 years, but 10 lifetimes. A bold plan began to form in my mind. Use my position as Walmart's South China Regional Warehouse Supervisor to empty the entire storage facility. With that kind of stock, I'd have more than enough to last me forever. Just then, my stomach growled obnoxiously. I immediately set out for the Michelin-starred restaurant I'd never dared to step into in my previous life. Securing a window seat, I ordered every signature dish on the menu. Having gorged on instant noodles for years in the last apocalypse, I was determined to treat myself to proper, piping hot delicacies this time around. The waiter's expression was priceless, as if he'd never seen such a ravenous, starved beast before. By pure coincidence, Fong Yiqing and her best friend happened to walk by the restaurant. For years, they'd dreamed of dining at such a place, but always had to settle for peeking inside from a distance due to their lack of money. But this time, something shocked them. There I was, Zhang Yi, the simp, sitting inside with a table full of luxurious dishes. Fong Yiqing's eyes lit up, ready to pounce on what she clearly saw as her big catch. She'd always wanted to marry rich and had kept me, the guy with a house and car, as her backup plan. Her friend, equally stunned, chimed in, "Not bad, Zhang Yi. This spread must have cost at least tens of thousands. Are you some kind of undercover trust fund kid?" Satisfied and full, I rose from my seat to leave. Just then, the waiter chased after me, loudly announcing, "Sir, you've spent over $50,000 today. Here's your VIP card. Please come again soon." Right then, a familiar yet annoyingly fake voice called out to me, "Wow, Zhang Yi, what a coincidence. Where are you heading?" Turning to face her, I saw the woman responsible for dismantling my ribcage for stew in my previous life. So, luck had brought her right to me. In this life, I would certainly take my time toying with her and her little entourage. Feigning politeness, I took out a supermarket gift card and casually mentioned I was stocking up on supplies. Fong Yiqing's eyes instantly gleamed as she offered to join me, even volunteering to help carry my items. Free labor? Why not? Plus, letting her witness the sheer magnitude of my stockpile would ensure I held all the cards in the apocalypse to come. Of course, she had one condition. Next time, she wanted me to treat her and her friend to another Michelin-starred feast. I neither agreed nor declined. Keeping her on the hook was far more entertaining. We soon returned to the neighborhood with 2 overflowing shopping carts of supplies. That's when Mrs. Lin, the nosy, troublemaking member of the neighborhood committee, waddled over. This woman had been a constant thorn in my side in my previous life. "Zhang, dear, you're snatching up all those clearance items from the warehouse again, aren't you? How about sparing just a little for me?" As I spoke, my grandson suddenly reached out from my arms and grabbed a piece of imported chocolate. I swiftly snatched it back and said coldly, "This is for me. If your grandson wants to eat, tell him to buy his own." The little brat, spoiled as could be, started screaming that he wanted to beat me up. I wasn't about to let that slide, so I sternly warned him, "Say one more word, and you'll catch a slap from me." The child instantly burst into tears. Meanwhile, Mrs. Lin, busy comforting the kid, turned her finger toward me and yelled, "It's just a piece of chocolate. What's the big deal about letting a kid have a bite? I'll pay for it if it's such an issue." Without missing a beat, I pulled out my payment QR code. "Fine, imported chocolate, $800 a piece. Pay up, and it's yours. If not, scram." Mrs. Lin was so dumbfounded she couldn't say a word. Finally, she let out a petty retort. "I'm on the HOA board. Let's see how you manage to keep living in this neighborhood." As I approached my apartment door, I noticed those 2 gold diggers trying to sweet-talk their way in. Without hesitation, I slammed the door shut with a bang. Then I immediately started moving all my supplies into my special storage space, ready to test its ability to preserve fresh items. Next up, my focus was on perfecting my safe house and stockpiling supplies like crazy. Food, medicine, heating equipment, and even defensive weaponry. There's no compromising on any of it. Based on my calculations, my current 3 million yuan wouldn't be enough. I'd have to start selling off my assets to raise more funds. The following day, I conducted a check on the supplies I had stored in the alternate space. The vegetables and meat were as fresh as when I put them in. The live fish had sadly died, but still looked incredibly fresh. This proved that time essentially stood still in this space. Since that's the case, unfortunately, I can't live inside, but I had an idea. Why not cook the meals in advance and store them in there? Problem solved. With a clear plan in mind, I went ahead and booked 800 banquet tables at the most luxurious hotel in town. Then I approached the bank, using the property my parents had left me as collateral for a 6 million yuan loan. Between the banquet and other expenses, I had already spent 1 million. The remaining 8 million was still going to make things tight for my overall plan. As I stood outside the bank, calculating my next steps, a weaselly little man approached me. "Hey, buddy, bank loans too much of a hassle? Why not try our company's no-collateral loans?" I smirked inwardly at how quickly these bloodsuckers came sniffing around to throw money at me. When I arrived at their base of operations, I immediately requested 5 million. We agreed that I'd pay back 10 million in 3 months, principal plus interest. They thought they'd hit the jackpot scamming some ignorant fool, while I was chuckling internally. You should worry more about how you're going to survive what's coming. With no financial constraints now, I contacted the largest security company in the country, one that primarily serves elite clients. They had once built a 100 billion yuan safe house for a trust fund kid, reportedly strong enough to withstand a nuclear blast. Typically, such high-security shelters are constructed for standalone villas, but I insisted on reinforcing my 24th floor condo instead. Sure, it was unusual, but I had reasons. I plan to stay in this neighborhood until I've systematically dealt with all the scum who betrayed me in my previous life. The plans were finalized quickly. I paid an extra 2 million to have the construction expedited. I demanded round-the-clock work to finish the safe house within 15 days. Although they were puzzled by my insistence on turning a 180 square meter condo into a fortress, they didn't care as long as the pay was good. Meanwhile, I tapped into my networking connections from years of managing warehouses to secure a stockpile of cold weapons. Just in case. Right on cue, the 800 banquet tables I had ordered arrived at the complex. The spectacle had my neighbors buzzing. They all thought I'd lost my mind. Amidst the mockery, a few couldn't help but mutter, "A single meal costing $1 million. This Zhang guy must really be loaded." Standing on the sidelines, Fang Yiqing was once again floored. For so long, she had thought of me as nothing more than a backup plan, but now she realized I was actually a wealthy heir all along. Of course, I could see right through her thoughts. She's a gold-digging vulture, and after the apocalypse, I'll personally make sure she pays for it. In front of everyone, I openly transferred all the gourmet food into my alternate space, enough to last me several lifetimes. They all thought I was crazy, but little did they know, there were only 10 days left until the end of the world. Let's see who's laughing then. Just as I finished these preparations, the head of the security team informed me they'd located a supplier for the firearms I wanted. The only issue was the price. It was steep. My response was simple. As long as it's high quality, money is no object. Now, only one thing was left, figuring out how to clean out the entire Walmart South China warehouse. With the goods there, I could live comfortably for generations. A few days later, the firearms were delivered, and the safe house was completed without a hitch. The fortress. In order to ensure customer privacy, the company went the extra mile by installing over 300 surveillance cameras throughout the entire building. Now, every corner of every floor is under clear watch. Satisfied, I signed off on the contract and promised to pay the remaining $5 million in 3 months. Though honestly, I doubt they'll even survive that long. Just then, the final trucks I had ordered, loaded with gallons of water, arrived at my neighborhood. Once again, my neighbors started gossiping. That Zhang, he must be out of his mind. We live in Tianhai, a coastal city, and he's stocking up on water? What a lunatic. Even Uncle Yu, who had helped me in my previous life, couldn't quite understand my actions. But at least he was kind enough to lend me a hand. Uncle Yu is one of the few genuinely good people in this neighborhood, so I decided to give him a little heads up. Uncle, I've got a gut feeling that the weather's acting strange this year. I think this winter's going to be especially brutal. My advice? Stock up on instant noodles and bottled water. They won't spoil anytime soon. Uncle Yu seemed partially convinced, but before he could fully absorb my words, Old Man Tang chimed in with his usual sarcastic tone. Kid, if you're sick, just go take your meds. Stop dragging others into your nonsense. Buying all that junk now. And now what? You're out here trying to stir up public panic? Want to get arrested for that? I just shook my head, exasperated. I've said my piece. Whether they heed the warning or not, that's on them. It's their lives on the line. For the rest of the time I had, my focus was clear. Spend every last dollar I've got, work on physical training, and get fully familiar with firearm operation. The countdown to the icebound apocalypse stood at 3 days. To secure Walmart's South China warehouse, I decided to stick to a direct yet effective plan. I purchased 10 pounds of sleeping pills and, during the night shift tea breaks, quietly slipped one into everyone's water cups. As the pills took effect, my colleagues all falling into a deep sleep, I cut off the surveillance camera's power and headed straight for the goods. With a subtle lift of my left hand, an entire shelf of supplies was instantly absorbed into my spatial storage. Before long, the entire warehouse had been emptied without a trace, and not a soul knew it was me. Then, in a corner of the warehouse, some special equipment caught my eye. I opened the box and discovered cutting-edge technology, state-of-the-art polar survival suits. The label boasted that, with these on, you'd be comfortable even while chasing penguins in the Arctic. The timing couldn't have been better. I stashed all of them into my storage without hesitation. Afterward, I swallowed half a sleeping pill myself and lay down on the floor, pretending to be unconscious. Such a massive operation, cleaning out an entire colossal warehouse in such a short time, was beyond what any one person could plausibly achieve. No one would suspect me. I have no idea how much time passed before loud cries from my coworkers jolted me awake. Holy crap, this is bad. Someone's cleared out the entire warehouse. Feigning disbelief, I rushed into the warehouse and went all in on my shocked supervisor act. With billions worth of inventory missing, I immediately reported the incident. At first, panic set in among my coworkers as they feared being held accountable, but they quickly brushed it off. This clearly wasn't a job a small group could pull off. Besides, on an $1,800 a month salary, not worth risking your neck over. With nothing to hide, there's nothing to fear. The countdown to the icebound apocalypse hit 2 days. Snowflakes the size of fingernails began quietly falling from the sky. Standing on the street, I savored the fleeting serenity of the moment. Because only I knew that, 2 days later, just before dawn, a supernova's gamma ray burst would sweep past Earth. The process would take merely 3 seconds, barely enough time to attract public attention, but its aftermath would bring catastrophic destruction to this planet. Our beautiful world would never be the same again. On the doomsday of the icebound apocalypse, it finally arrived. A miracle unfolded in Tianhai, a southern coastal city. It began snowing goose feather-sized flakes. Neighbors were buzzing in the residential group chat, thrilled by the rare sight, and some even went outside to build snowmen. But I alone knew this was only the beginning. They couldn't begin to fathom what was coming their way. By the next morning, the snow had piled over a meter high, leaving ground floor residents unable to even open their doors. Temperatures plummeted, and despite maxing out their heaters, many found themselves freezing. Meanwhile, I was sound asleep in the warmth of my spring-like safe house. After all, this mattress alone had cost me 5 million. Abruptly, my peaceful rest was disturbed by a rapid phone ringing. It was a call from Fang Yiqing. Looks like she's already turned to me for help. But it wasn't time yet. I had my own plan in place, so I hung up without hesitation, leaving her unanswered. Feeling refreshed, I treated myself to a hot shower. Then, retrieving a slab of premium Wagyu beef from my spatial storage, I prepared a breakfast of steak paired with a glass of fine red wine. As I savored my meal, I turned on the TV to catch the morning news. The temperature was still just beginning to drop, so electricity and network services were mostly intact. That said, I was well prepared even for a full-blown outage. 10 generators and an immense stockpile of gasoline. Forget a few months. Even if this place were frozen for hundreds of years, I'd still be just fine. Meanwhile, the news anchor keeps repeating the same optimistic message. The snowstorm will pass soon. Please remain calm. Avoid hoarding supplies. But I know better. In a frozen wasteland like this, survival depends solely on yourself. Those who believe in such official reassurances and take no action are often the first to freeze to death. With such thoughts in mind, I leisurely opened my phone, curious to see what my once skeptical neighbors were discussing now. Just then, a message from Fang Yiqing popped up. Why did you hang up on me? Look, you've got so many supplies. Could you spare me a little? I'll pay you back as soon as the snow melts. A cold smirk crept across my face as I recalled how, in a previous life, she'd tricked me so badly, with my very ribs boiled into soup to feed her. I snapped a picture of the steak and red wine on my table, deliberately including my relaxed state in silk pajamas. Then I sent it to her without hesitation. This time around, this gold digger wasn't getting a single thing from me. She saw the photo, and I could almost feel her mouth watering. As a seasoned gold digger, of course, she immediately recognized the premium Wagyu steak and that rare bottle of 1983 Lafite wine worth tens of thousands. A voice message came through soon after, in her simpering, whiny tone. I just want to have steak and red wine too, pretty please. Fang Yiqing thought smugly to herself. After dropping such a clear hint, this pushover of a guy would surely bring her the meal on a silver platter. But when I played the voice message, I burst out laughing, the sound akin to clanging weights. Did she really think I was still the same gullible fool she toyed with in my past life? Calmly, I typed a short reply. If you want it, go buy it yourself at the supermarket. Fang Yiqing was fuming, but she held back her anger. After all, she'd worked on reeling me in for this long. She couldn't just let her big fish get away. Meanwhile, I decided to switch on my outdoor surveillance system to survey the snow-covered world outside. On screen, the neighborhood enforcer, Aunt Lin, stood defiantly at the complex entrance, addressing the gathered residents. Everyone must stay calm. No hoarding supplies. Don't disrupt social order. Otherwise, when the snowstorm is over, we'll ensure that punishments are handed down one by one. She even vowed with absolute confidence that this extreme weather would pass in just a few days. Watching her from the screen, I couldn't help but chuckle, because, unlike her and everyone else, I knew the truth. This snowstorm would last a full 6 months. And this moment was their last chance to stock up. One neighbor stepped forward to voice his concern. If we don't stock up now, in a few days, there won't be anything left to buy. But Aunt Lin stubbornly clung to her authority, waving it like her personal banner. Anyone who dares go out right now will be reported directly to higher-ups. It was then that I strolled downstairs, letting my voice cut through the debate. Aunt Lin, do you even know how long this snow is going to last? If everyone runs out of food, will you take responsibility for that? The crowd immediately chimed in their agreement. Exactly. He's right. Aunt Lin, momentarily struck dumb, glared at me with daggers in her eyes, plotting revenge on the spot. Finally, rallying her composure, she scolded me loudly. Zhang Yi, stirring up dissent at a time like this. What's your true motive? You're breaking the law. Shrugging, I replied with a smirk. I'll leave the dramatics to you. As for me, I'm staying put. Do as you please. With that, I turned and headed back into the elevator, leaving everyone else to bicker below. A few days later, I was lounging at home peacefully, immersed in a video game, when a mass message popped up in the community group chat. Aunt Lynn was at it again, tagging me specifically, along with a few of the quieter residents, urging us to come out and shovel snow. I chuckled to myself. Shovel snow? Before it even stopped falling? She must have been kidding. Meanwhile, Aunt Lynn was huddled in her own apartment, trembling by a tiny space heater. The neighbors she'd tagged began responding one by one. Aunt Lynn, this is the South. Who owns proper winter gear here? Going out in this is just asking to get frostbite. Aunt Lynn was seething, convinced, of course, that it was yet another act of rebellion led by me, Zhang Yi. Determined, she posted once more, this time doubling down on her official tone and reminding everyone that this was a direct order from the neighborhood committee. In times of crisis, she lectured, everyone must show solidarity. Additionally, she warned, those who disobeyed would undoubtedly face consequences after the disaster ended. Reading her message, I laughed dryly to myself. Aunt Lynn's habit of clinging to borrowed authority was almost comical. Looks like it was time to call her bluff. In the group chat, I replied plainly, how come, as a representative of the committee, you're not out there leading by example? And another thing, why does this supposed order only apply to the quiet, reserved residents? Why not ask Chen Jinghao or Su Hao instead? Now, Chen Jinghao was a well-known neighborhood troublemaker. Understood, ready to translate to match American English and tone. So he's got hundreds of people working under him, real power in his hands. Meanwhile, Su Hao is just another trust fund kid. This apartment? Nothing but a secret love nest for him and his mistress. In my previous life, it was Chen Jinghao who came at me with an axe, while Su Hao helped dismember what was left after. It was a nightmare. To top it all off, my so-called neighbors got a piece of the action, taking anything they could from me. But now, the gloves are off. If they want to fight, I'll gladly give them one. Feeling cornered, Mrs. Lin, that two-faced woman, reluctantly added those two in the group chat, as if pretending she was trying to mediate. Chen Jinghao wasn't having it though. He sent a voice message, full of profanity, saying, "Mess with me again, and you're dead." Su Hao wasn't any nicer. He shot back, "Who do you think you are, bossing me around? You're just an old hag. I pay all these insane property fees, for what? So you can feel like the queen of the complex? You're pathetic. Wouldn't you know it?" He even sent a photo of him and his mistress, all cozy and loved up, just to stick it to her. Mrs. Lin? She was fuming, absolutely raging, and, predictably, she needed someone weaker to unload on. Naturally, she chose me. My messages were blowing up with her venom. But I wasn't about to take that lying down. I snapped back, "You spineless old bat. Bully someone else again, and you'll have more to worry about than your arthritis." Silence. Total silence. I guess she realized she wasn't cut out for this kind of exchange. Then, just like that, a loud knock shook my front door. It was Chen Jinghao. Apparently, he felt humiliated after I called him out in the group chat. Now, he was here, at my door, threatening to kill me. I wasn't scared though. If it's going to be him or me, then it's him. Especially this time around. I've been waiting for a chance like this. I grabbed my crossbow, steadying myself for one clean shot. But then, I had a better idea. Letting him off easy with instant death felt like a waste. Why not make him suffer? I aimed for his leg instead. With a firm pull of the trigger, the arrow flew, slicing clean through his lower leg. I watched through the peephole as he collapsed, writhing in agony. A cruel, twisted satisfaction burned in my chest. That leg? Useless now. Without proper treatment, it'd be only a matter of time before infection set in. In this bone-chilling weather, his fate was sealed. A slow, miserable death. For the first time, I saw it, fear. Pure fear in his eyes. This man, who'd ruled the block for years, suddenly realized he wasn't invincible anymore. But he wasn't about to give up. After all, this guy's resume was built on hardcore street brawler grit. He pulled himself inside, grabbed a knife, alcohol, and some gauze. His leg was already so numb with frostbite. He didn't even flinch when slicing into himself to pull the arrow out. The scream that followed, though, now that pierced the icy night like a dagger. Then, from the warmth of his hideout, he He composed himself just long enough to drop a fiery message in the group chat. Zhang Yi, this isn't over. You hear me? If I don't take you down, mark my words, I'm no longer Chen Jinghao. I didn't flinch. My reply was immediate and sharp as ever. Try me. Let's see if you walk out of here with the other leg attached. The neighborhood chat? Chaos. Total chaos. People couldn't believe what was unfolding. And just as predicted, Chun dialed in his goons, ordering them to grab their gear and show up, armed and ready, outside my place. Tonight, he declared, was the night we settled the score. His boys didn't waste a second, storming over with weapons in hand, braving the blizzard. When they arrived, Chun was frothing at the mouth, barking commands. There he is, Unit 2401. Take down the door. I want him in pieces by the time it's over. They started pounding on my door nonstop. Meanwhile, I casually sat inside, gaming, flicking through the security cams for entertainment. One of them, real genius over here, tried smashing the door with a sword. Guess what? The blade shattered into pieces. What they didn't know was this wasn't your average door. It was reinforced, practically bulletproof. Still, they wouldn't quit, hurling threats and stomping around the hallway like maniacs. By then, I'd had enough. I walked to the door, grabbed a hose, attached it to the sink, and fished the other end through the shooting slot. Through the cameras, you could see them freeze in place, bracing for another crossbow attack. But instead of arrows, ice-cold water burst out. At sub-zero temperatures, the water instantly froze on their clothes, locking them into icy shells. You should have seen it. These tough guys reduced to shivering wrecks. They didn't last long after that, running for their lives. As for me, another round of gaming, barely breaking a sweat. When they got back to Chun, still trembling and half covered in frost, the guy lost it. However, they didn't hold back either, whining like kids about some impossibly heavy door and getting sprayed like stray cats. Chun, trying to piece it all together, stewed in frustration. Sure, he remembered my door was built like a fortress. But even then, he wasn't ready to back down just yet. The kid can hide inside forever if he wants. He barked orders at his lackeys. You guys, take shifts guarding his door. The moment he dares to step out, take him out. Little did they know, I had an entire supermarket's worth of supplies hoarded at home. Starving them out? Piece of cake. Downstairs, the snow had already piled up higher than a person. A few neighbors, duped into shoveling by Aunt Lynn, were completely out of energy. The rate of shoveling couldn't even keep up with the snow falling from the skies. And they were clueless about the real extent of the snowfall. It was going to last for 6 whole months. Everything they were doing now? Totally pointless. Before long, they returned to their homes, heads hanging low in frustration. Meanwhile, the TV news was cycling through footage of disasters from all over the country. The message? The snowstorms across the ocean were even worse. Poor management had led to hundreds of millions affected and tens of millions already dead. As for us, the officials were working tirelessly to combat the disaster. A message of stay calm and wait for rescue, painted with optimism for the masses. Watching the news, I gave a lazy yawn, thinking to myself that everyone was far too optimistic. They had no clue about the real scale or duration of this snowstorm. Right on cue, Aunt Lynn started stirring up the HOA chat again, trying to show off her non-existent authority. Suddenly, Fang Yiqing sent me a private message, expressing her concern for me. In my past life, I had been her most loyal admirer, only for her to betray me in the end and lead to my death. This time around, I was determined to play her like a fiddle. As expected, she recycled her old tricks, subtly angling for some of my supplies. Smiling to myself, I snapped a picture of the giant Australian lobster I had just cooked and sent it to her, alongside a casual comment. Already finished eating. That response pissed her off to no end. Fuming with frustration, she silently cursed me as an unromantic simp, vowing to demote me further down her backup plan list. Next, her bestie jumped in to play the good cop, advising me to use this snowstorm as a golden chance to win Yiqing's heart. You should look at this as an opportunity to show her how much you care. How can she see your sincerity if you're this stingy with your supplies? I couldn't help but burst into laughter at their little performance. Coolly, I replied with a single word, huh. Realizing this tactic wasn't going to work, they switched to plan B, calling in suitor number 2, Zhou Peng. Compared to me, Zhou Peng couldn't hold a candle. The house he was currently living in, he'd gone broke renting it just to be closer to Yiqing. He was the most devoted of I Ching's simps, so loyal that I'd bet he'd gladly give up a rib if it meant making soup for his goddess. As soon as Zhou Peng got the call for help, he practically leapt into action, gathering all his remaining supplies and delivering them straight to I Ching. Touched by his actions, I Ching gave him a rare sweet smile before promptly shutting the door in his face and sending him packing. Safe inside, her demeanor immediately shifted, her expression clouded with disdain. "Pathetic," she muttered. "How dare that guy think he has a shot with me? He needs to take a good, hard look in the mirror." 5 days flew by after that. I knew the real chaos was about to start. Based on my memories of the previous timeline, a massive power outage was just around the corner. Sure enough, that evening, the world was plunged into darkness, water and electricity cut off entirely. Meanwhile, in my well-prepped house, I was chilling, gaming in the cozy warmth of my fortress. In the pitch-black hallways outside, my neighbors were left bewildered and anxious. Little did they know that just one wall away, I had the heat cranked up, powered by 2 ultra-quiet generators. You see, I knew this was coming. I had seen the future. That's why I went all out, taking out $1 billion in loans to turn this house into a full-blown survival bunker. Here's the truth no one else had figured out. When temperatures drop to below -80 degrees, human effort means nothing. Power stations had long since gone offline, backup generators were running out of fuel, and even nuclear plants were focusing on keeping government locations operational. Local energy reserves wouldn't last. Widespread blackouts were inevitable. It only took 3 days of darkness and freezing temperatures for panic to set in. The realization hit everyone hard. This wasn't survivable with the bare minimum. Babies couldn't get formula mixed. Heaters and air conditioners? Completely useless, nothing more than expensive junk. Indoor temperatures had dropped to -30 degrees, and if things didn't change, people would start freezing to death in their own homes. Some still naively pinned their hopes on government rescue teams, clueless that even those agencies were stretched too thin to help anyone. Unlike them, I was ready. I had prepared for this moment. The apocalypse had begun. Without food, water, and power, society was about to unravel, with death tolls rising exponentially. Over in the HOA group chat, panic turned to finger-pointing. Someone called out Aunt Lynn. "Weren't you the one telling everyone not to stock up on supplies? Why don't you speak up now, Aunt Lynn?" Aunt Lynn was in full-blown panic mode too, unable to cope with the fact that the disaster was out of everyone's control. Her terror? Way worse than anyone else's. Because, just a moment ago, she used her inside connections to get some early information. The higher-ups warned, this could be a once-in-100,000 years catastrophic event, potentially escalating into a mass extinction. Most cities around the globe were already out of contact. If you wanted to survive, you could only rely on yourself. But Mrs. Lin was already scheming. Instead of passing on the notification from the higher-ups accurately, she rolled out her usual tactics. Ignoring her conscience, she told everyone that the disaster was temporary and that they had to comply with centralized management. She insisted that all supplies must be handed over for redistribution under the guise of weathering the storm together. She even threatened that if anyone disobeyed, they might face interrogation or even arrest by law enforcement after the disaster. Her words immediately sparked outrage among the residents. This was a blatant threat. Brother Hao, upon seeing the messages, was fuming with anger. That old bag. She can't solve anything, but has the nerve to act all high and mighty. Meanwhile, his gang of thugs was in an even worse state. A few of them had already developed high fevers, and without any medicine, they huddled together, relying on body heat to survive. And then there was me, sitting inside, tired from playing video games, stretching leisurely. Watching Mrs. Lin put on the same performance as she did in my past life, I couldn't help but chuckle out loud. Seeing that no one in the group was responding to her call to surrender their supplies, Mrs. Lin finally turned her attention to me. She remembered that just a few days ago, I had bought 3 entire carloads of supplies. Using a friendly tone, she tried to persuade me to voluntarily hand them over, promising that she'd report my noble sacrifices to the higher authorities and ensure I'd be rewarded after the crisis. I let out a cold laugh. In my previous life, she had pulled off this same play. First, she manufactured panic in the group, then privately messaged the more timid residents to coax and threaten them, convincing them to hand over their supplies. After all, if she scored just one stash of supplies, she'd be able to scrape by for days. Having just eaten my fill, I put down my controller and lazily replied, "Oh, my supplies? Just ate the last of them yesterday. When it's time for redistribution, do save me a portion, will you?" Mrs. Lin was instantly furious. She thought to herself, how could this guy predict my moves so accurately? In my past life, as a warehouse manager, I often helped neighbors snag discounted items. And as an employee, I had first dibs on purchases. In Mrs. Lin's eyes, I must have hoarded a mountain of supplies, a prime target. Trying to maintain her composure, she took several deep breaths before responding in a gentle, nearly pleading tone. "Xiaozhong, look, you have to think long-term here. This is all about obeying the organization's orders. Every bit of your contribution will be remembered. Everyone knows you're a supervisor at the big supermarket. This little bit of supplies must be nothing to you. Be a leader and bring over your supplies first, won't you?" Having just devoured an entire roasted lamb, I picked my teeth nonchalantly and replied, "Like I said, my supplies just ran out yesterday. How about you show some of that organizational spirit and share a few packs of instant noodles with me?" Seeing this, Mrs. Lin's expression flipped in an instant. She erupted, "You're refusing to comply with the organization's orders. You're outright defying the organization. Just wait until you're dealt with." I took my time typing out my comeback, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "Who do you think you are? You actually consider yourself some kind of official? You're just a busybody from the neighborhood committee pretending to have authority. Your job is to serve the residents, not boss us around. What are you going to do to me, huh, old hag?" With that, I unceremoniously exposed Mrs. Lin's true colors and immediately blocked her. She was so enraged she nearly fainted. For someone who prided herself on being the community manager, this kind of humiliation was unbearable. But in her current vulnerable position, there was nothing she could do except swallow her pride. Mrs. Lin then began calling each household she suspected of hoarding supplies. Out of the over 100 units in the building, a subset of gullible residents were unfortunately tricked into stepping out and handing over their goods. From the comfort of my home, I watched all this unfold on the security cameras while enjoying a bowl of instant noodles. I couldn't help but shake my head at how naive they were. Just give it a few days, regret would hit them like a truck. 2 days later, chaos erupted in the residents' group chat. Those who had been duped started hurling curses at Mrs. Lin and her entire family. "Where's that redistribution you promised?" But instead of replying, Mrs. Lin stayed silent as she read the messages. She had anticipated this reaction from the moment she decided to deceive them. Asterisk these idiots. If I manage to swindle their things fair and square, what makes them think I'll give any of it back? Asterisk. Just as she was basking in her twisted victory, her phone suddenly rang. To her dismay, it was none other than the neighborhood bully, Chen Jinghao, calling. Trembling in fear, she knew she couldn't afford to ignore him. As soon as she picked up, Chen Jinghao's voice boomed through the speaker. "You old witch. You've got some nerve, scamming the neighbors out of their supplies." She pretended to respond earnestly, saying she was managing supplies for everyone as it was her duty. Chen Jinghao, however, bluntly said that he and his brothers were running low on supplies and demanded that she deliver them immediately. Grandma Lin continued feigning ignorance, claiming supplies still needed to be sorted and many people hadn't turned in their share yet, so no allocation plans had been made. Chen Jinghao's patience snapped. "Do you really think you can brush me off with that garbage excuse? Don't test my kindness. Hand everything over now. Either you bring it to me, or I'll bring 20 men to your doorstep myself." Not long after, Chen Jinghao, unable to contain himself, stormed over to Grandma Lin's home with his lackeys. He kicked the door down with one swift motion. Without a word, he slapped her hard across the face and shouted, "You shameless old hag! How dare you steal the neighborhood supplies? Today, Hao Gu, will deliver justice." This entire scene was witnessed by me as I casually snacked on a sausage. Back when the safe house was built, the security company had installed surveillance cameras throughout the building to ensure the absolute safety of clients. 500 cameras in total, covering virtually every corner of the public areas except the interiors of individual homes. It was a near 360-degree surveillance setup. At that moment, inspiration struck. It was only the 5th day of the frozen apocalypse, yet here was this drama unfolding right in front of me. Even better, Both sides of the conflict were people I despised. I decided to record the entire spectacle and upload it to the community group chat. Surely, the neighbors would enjoy this show and clap with delight. Chen Jinghao quickly ordered his men to seize all the supplies. He raised his voice and said, "These are the life-saving rations that our neighbors painstakingly gathered. How can we let this old hag get away with it?" Meanwhile, Grandma Lin had collapsed to the ground, unable to move. Seeing that Chen Jinghao planned to leave her with nothing, she crawled over, clinging to his leg, and cried out in despair, "Please, take the neighbor's supplies if you must, but leave what I saved for me and my grandson. I beg you, have mercy." Chen Jinghao, who already had an injured leg, instinctively kicked her away as she grabbed him, sending her sprawling back onto the ground. "Enough nonsense, get out of my way." Grandma Lin let out a blood-curdling scream before fainting on the spot. Her young grandson, seeing his snacks being taken, grabbed a fruit knife and yelled, "You thieves! Give me back my chocolate." The next second, he stabbed one of the lackeys in the butt. The bald lackey turned around to see it was just a kid. Angered, he kicked the boy hard, sending him flying over 6 feet away. Witnessing this, the others cheered him on, laughing and praising him. "Nice kick, fifth bro." Seeing this from the ground, Grandma Lin, who had been playing dead, let out a heart-wrenching wail. "How can you be so cruel? He's just a 6-year-old boy." Chen Jinghao, however, retorted righteously, "You brought this upon yourselves. This is what you get for tricking your neighbors. I'm serving justice." With that, his crew left triumphantly with their ill-gotten gains. The entire incident was captured on video by me and promptly uploaded to our neighborhood group chat. The neighbors who had been scammed by Grandma Lin initially continued cursing her in frustration, but when they watched the video, they were overwhelmingly satisfied to see justice served. They vented their anger by vehemently condemning the old woman, admitting to themselves that while Chen Jinghao probably wouldn't return the supplies, seeing the deceitful culprit punished made them temporarily regard Chen Jinghao as some kind of hero. Chen Jinghao, without a doubt, gained both reputation and spoils in this affair. At that moment, only I knew the truth. If he could do this to Grandma Lin today, it wouldn't be long before he came for each of their homes in a similar manner. But that wouldn't matter to me. Not long after, a desperate message appeared in the group chat from Grandma Lin. "I know I was wrong to scam everyone, but my grandson is innocent. He's been severely injured by Chen Jinghao and urgently needs medical treatment. I'll kneel to all of you if that's what it takes for help." The neighbors, disgusted by her, didn't bother responding to her cries for help. Instead, the group chat filled with cold mockery and cruel remarks. Just as it seemed all hope was lost, someone named Zhou Kur messaged, saying she would take a look at Lin Xiaohu and administer emergency first aid. Instantly, the image of Zhou Kur came to mind, a strong, poised woman with a compassionate streak. She worked as a doctor at the city hospital and was one of the few genuinely good people living in our building. In the previous timeline, she had saved many lives. Later, Dr. Zhou posted an update in the chat, saying she had stabilized Lin Xiaohu's condition for the time being, but that he would need surgery at a hospital soon to survive. She also offered to help any neighbors in need of medical attention, showing a level of altruism that overwhelmed me with admiration for her character and professionalism. Unfortunately, her efforts were all in vain. The snowstorm showed no signs of letting up. In fact, it was only getting worse. Even if the boy was saved now, survival in the long term would be impossible. By the 7th day of the frozen apocalypse, the snow had almost completely buried the first floor of our building. Neighbors began to realize. It was only when people realized the sheer horror of the snow disaster that they understood relying on official rescue efforts was a pipe dream. The internet was already full of cries for help, and the entire world lay buried under an endless white abyss. In the far reaches of the north, temperatures had plummeted to an unimaginable -200 degrees Fahrenheit, leaving those who failed to evacuate in time permanently entombed under the relentless blizzard. At this time, Aunt Lin was stirring up a storm for attention in the neighborhood chat group again. She claimed that Chen Jinghao had stolen all her food, and her grandson could only barely cling to life on the bed. Aunt Lin's mental state had spiraled into complete madness. One moment, she was hallucinating she was still the high and mighty head of the residence committee, demanding everyone surrender their supplies. The next, she was offering to buy provisions at exorbitant prices. Then, another resident chimed in. I've got a few packs of instant noodles left. $1,000 per pack if anyone wants them. As soon as the message was sent, the atmosphere in the chat group became oddly tense. A single mom named Cieli immediately responded, I'll buy them. But before she could finalize, a spoiled rich kid, Su Hao, jumped in. I'll pay $2,000 per pack. However many you've got, I'll buy them all. Reading through the messages in the group, I couldn't help but think how amusing this was. A new drama was clearly about to unfold. Su Hao's bid sent the chat into chaos. Some saw a lucrative opportunity. Others frowned with disapproval, while a few sent sarcastic voice messages. Come on, it's just a snowstorm. No need to act like it's the zombie apocalypse. Meanwhile, I was gnawing on a drumstick, a faint smile on my face as I shook my head. Zombie apocalypse? That couldn't even compare to this icy end-of-days scenario. At least with zombies, humans could still mount a defense against a world-ending natural disaster, though humanity was powerless. It seems Su Hao understood this, which was why he was using his money power to hoard as many supplies as he could. And honestly, his strategy was working. At that moment, the single mom, Cieli, tearfully wrote in the chat, My daughter is only 9 months old. If I don't eat, I won't even have milk to feed her. I need those noodles to save her life. Reading her desperate plea, I paused in thought. In my memory, she had indeed survived for quite some time with her daughter in this previous timeline. She wasn't some helpless damsel. If anything, she was incredibly resourceful. From what I remembered, she had relied on garnering sympathy for her daughter to secure supplies and ultimately managed to pull through. Day 10 of the frozen apocalypse. I had just retrieved a steaming Chinese-style chicken platter and a decadent dessert from my alternate space. Setting down my weights, I was ready to enjoy my meal when I got a video call from Fong Yiqing. I chuckled. Let me guess. These two gold diggers are finally ready to beg me for help? I answered the video call immediately, angling the camera toward the table loaded with warm, delicious food. On the other end, Fong Yiqing and her friend Lin Caning looked like they were about to drool through the screen, probably cursing inwardly. This sucker was hoarding all this the entire time? Putting on her most syrupy, sickly sweet voice, Fong Yiqing cooed. Zhang Yi, you have so much food at your place. Wait, are you sweating? Is your house warm? Oh, nothing much, I replied nonchalantly. I just had a fireplace installed ahead of time. It's so warm here I feel a little hot. The words food and fireplace stunned the two women on the other side of the call. Their pretense dissolved as they gawked at my cozy setup, their faces betraying sheer desperation. Zhang Yi, Gij, can I come stay at your place? I can do anything you want. Fong Yiqing was a master manipulator. She had twisted countless men around her finger in the previous timeline, including me. She likely thought that a subtle hint like this would have me falling over myself to agree. But this time, with a hint of mockery, I replied slowly, I hear it's really cold out there right now. Probably not a good idea to go wandering around. Her pretense cracked entirely when I rejected her outright. I'm literally throwing myself at you, and you're still playing hard to get? You want me to spell it out for you? She snapped angrily, her tone flipping in an instant. Zhang Yi, don't push it too far. I smirked, amused. Oh, dropping the act already? You only come running to me when you see I've got something you want, and then you play the pity card. Why don't you hit up one of your rich ex-boyfriends instead? What makes you think you can freeload off me? We aren't even close. With that, I hung up the call. Through the screen, I could see Fong Yiqing hurl her phone to the ground in frustration. That damn backup plan. Who does he think he is? He should feel lucky I'm even giving him the time of day, she screamed. Beside her, Lin Caning coldly sneered. If you'd reeled him in a few days ago, we'd already be enjoying his fireplace and food. Instead, you decided to act all high and mighty. What's the point of playing hard to get now? People like him are more sought after than your so-called ex-rich boyfriends these days. Hearing this, Fong Yiqing angrily lunged at her supposed best friend, and thus began the catfight of the century between two hollow, plastic sisters. They immediately broke into a scuffle. Meanwhile, the official news channel on television was still working hard to soothe the public's anxiety. But compared to before, the broadcaster's tone now carried a faint, almost imperceptible trace of fear. An official announcement was issued. Starting today, there will be a power limit each afternoon from 1 to 2 o'clock. High-power appliances are strictly prohibited during this time, and violators will be blacklisted and permanently cut off from electricity. The building's group chat erupted into chaos. The price of instant noodles, which was 2,000 yesterday, had surged to 5,000. Watching these transactions, I couldn't help but sigh. Even now, people are foolish enough to exchange precious resources for money. How naive and laughable. But no matter how absurd things get, life has to go on, even if it's just barely scraping by. Some people offer medical skills for survival. Others survive with the so-called power of money. As for Fong Yiqing and Lin Caning, they were already at their wits' end. A ruthless idea sparked in their minds. Kill me and take over my apartment. They immediately called their topmost simp, Zhou Peng. The moment Zhou Peng heard that his goddess was reaching out to him, he was so excited that he forgot all about the biting cold, rushing to their aid without hesitation. As soon as he arrived, Fong Yiqing launched into an act. Zhang Yi is such a beast. All I wanted was to borrow some supplies, but he said I had to spend a night with him in return. Seeing his goddess so distraught and knowing that she had chosen him to turn to, Zhou Peng was convinced. This must be love. This was his moment to prove his manliness. Riding the momentum, Fong Yiqing clutched his arm and said, "Brother Peng, let's take Zhang Yi's apartment. He has so many supplies, and then we can live there together, okay?" How could Zhou Peng resist that kind of temptation? At that moment, he even started thinking of names for their future children. He grabbed a weapon and declared, "Leave it to me." The three of them quickly made their way to my apartment. Their plan was for Zhou Peng to lure me into opening the door, then the two women would rush in and overpower me. Zhou Peng started banging on the door, pretending to negotiate, claiming he had ibuprofen to trade for 2 packs of instant noodles. In the frozen apocalypse, fever-reducing medication was a rare and valuable commodity. Offering to trade such a highly sought-after item for something as simple as 2 packs of noodles was an obvious trap to entice me. But little did they know, I had already seen through their pitiful plan via my surveillance system. Really? The three of you think you can take me down? Watch me make fools out of you. I had initially planned to teach them a lesson with my trusty water spray system again, but then I noticed a bucket of slop in the corner. A new idea struck me. Time to give them a reality check. Aiming my hose through the shootout port, I casually replied, "Sure, 2 packs it is." Zhou Peng, thinking the door was about to open, quickly signaled the two women to get ready. But instead of the door opening, a foul-smelling, sticky liquid sprayed right in their faces. Realizing what had just happened, they sniffed themselves and were instantly overcome with disgust. Slop water. The two women immediately began gagging and cursing, while Zhou Peng, humiliated in front of his goddesses, was consumed with rage and started pounding on the door. I mockingly taunted, "Aren't you guys low on supplies? Consider this leftover food a free gift. Don't forget to thank me." Furious, Zhou Peng swung a cleaver directly at the door, but all that resulted was a loud clang. This reinforced steel door was designed to withstand explosions, and his cleaver ricocheted straight off, the recoil splitting his palm open. Blood gushed as he fell to the ground in pain, writhing. Seeing this, the two women didn't even hesitate. They bolted, abandoning Zhou Peng without a second thought. Watching the scene unfold on my monitor, I couldn't help but laugh. 3 pathetic fools. Settling back onto my couch, I resumed my game. So long as I never step outside, there's nothing any of you can do to me. Just wait. I'll outlast every single one of you. The global freeze continues. Day 15 of the apocalypse. Food and supplies have become unimaginably scarce. Over at Rich Kid Suhao's place, a single packet of instant noodles now costs 50,000, and a bottle of water is 10,000. The building's group chat exploded once again. Ever since the supplies were looted by Qin Zhenghao, Mrs. Lin's mental state seemed to have deteriorated. She kept bombarding the group with voice messages, demanding everyone surrender their resources to the community. She even threatened to prosecute everyone after the disaster ended. But now, no one paid her any attention. She was just a joke to them. People had finally realized what kind of world they were truly living in. Instead, they cursed her endlessly in the chat. If it hadn't been for her interference earlier, everyone could have stockpiled at least another 2 weeks' worth of supplies. Just thinking about it sent the group into a fury. Some openly wished she'd freeze to death outside. That same afternoon, a deafening bang shattered the stillness of the building. I shot up immediately, my expression turning grim. Was that a gunshot? Grabbing my tablet, I quickly switched the monitor feed on. To go through with it. The scene before me made my pupils contract. Chen Jinghao, that scumbag, wasn't dead after all. Turns out, the bully had coerced and bribed Dr. Zhou to treat him meticulously. His leg injury was mostly healed. At this moment, he and his lackeys were in a neighbor's apartment on the 3rd floor, looting supplies. It was the warmest time of the afternoon, a time when many would venture out to collect snow to melt for water. Clearly, Chen Jinghao had chosen this exact moment to strike. Judging by the situation, the hope for those 3rd floor neighbors to survive was slim. Even if the shot didn't hit any vital organs, a lack of supplies would soon be a death sentence. After gathering up the stolen provisions, Chen Jinghao wasn't about to stop there. He pulled out his phone, snapped a few photos, and then sent an audio message to the building's group chat. The city's buried in snow. We're on our own now. I, Chen Jinghao, am taking charge as the building chief of 25th Avenue. From this moment on, what happens in this building will be by my say, and my say alone. If you want to survive, don't try anything clever. Otherwise, you'll end up like him. Along with the audio, he sent 2 photos. The first was of his hand gripping the gun. The second was of the neighbor lying lifeless in a pool of blood on the 3rd floor. The chat fell into a dead silence. As I brushed my teeth, I couldn't help but admire his methods. Ruthless, yes, but effective. After all, he only had one gun with limited bullets and a gang of 5 or 6 useless underlings. If it came down to sheer numbers, the angry neighbors could easily overpower him. But this tactic was his warning shot. It wasn't about invincibility, it was about intimidation. Chen Jinghao was a cunning old fox, no doubt about it. Still, none of this really concerned me. Later, I noticed some neighbors had created a new group chat called the Rebel Against Chen Jinghao Alliance. In it, they condemned his crimes and were feverishly discussing plans to unite against the tyrant. Angry messages flooded in. So what if he has a gun? There are more of us than them. He can't shoot all of us. A neighbor with a last name Ma chimed in. Exactly. I've done martial arts for years. I'll take him down with 3 punches and 2 kicks. The group went wild, hyping themselves up like they were moments away from storming downstairs and taking Chen Jinghao out on the spot. Then, someone asked, "So, when do we make our move?" That one question killed the energy in the chat. Silence. Again. As I scrolled through their messages, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. It's easy to talk big, but when it comes to dodging bullets and risking their lives, that's a different story. Finally, Uncle Yu, a quiet, retired veteran with a reputation for being straightforward and just, spoke up. If we let that bastard Chen Jinghao go unchecked, we're all dead. I'll take the lead. Who's coming with me? Uncle Yu was well respected in the neighborhood. His sense of justice and straightforward demeanor had earned him the trust of many. His message immediately rallied several neighbors to his side. He said he'd need at least 10 young men to join him since Chen Jinghao had a firearm. Just then, a woman in the group chat, calling herself Little Fairy, interjected. Uncle Yu, stop pretending to be the hero. Remember how Auntie Lin tricked everyone into losing their supplies? What if you take all the capable men to join Chen Jinghao instead? What would happen to the women and children left behind? In her next message, she added, in this kind of world, women are more important. Men's only role now is to serve and protect us. If you're really such a tough guy, go take him down alone. The rest of the men need to stay and guard us. She ended with a cutting remark. Anyone who disagrees is just a useless man, right? Shockingly, a fair few in the chat agreed with her point of view. Uncle Yu, disheartened, said no more. The building's residents, divided, had now formed 2 camps. I followed the drama play out, entertained. It's not like there was much else to do nowadays. Watching them hurl insults in the chat was, honestly, pretty amusing. It seemed like with all the bottled-up frustration, these folks had finally found an outlet. Most had completely forgotten why they made the group chat in the first place. Meanwhile, I'd moved to the kitchen to prepare dinner. I decided on braised chicken, though when it was done, the color and texture. Well, let's just say it wasn't all that appetizing. Suddenly, another gunshot echoed. Immediately, I checked my monitor and saw that 2 of Chen Jinghao's men appeared to be dead. I recognized them as the 2 I'd doused with water a few nights back. The bitter cold must have been too much for them. They'd frozen to death. But what I couldn't understand was why they had left the corpses in the hallway instead of tossing them out the window. Then, a chilling thought crossed my mind. Were they leaving the bodies there as backup food supply? The very notion made my hair stand on end. Chen Jinghao was directing his remaining men to process the bodies. His underlings were obviously reluctant, but with Chen Jinghao's gun pressed to their heads, they didn't really have a choice. Obey. After all, his goal was to ensure everyone lived longer. But Chen Jinghao was well aware that without a gun in hand, there's no way this group would listen to him. It was only by forcing his subordinates to join in that they were completely tied to the same fate. I couldn't help but marvel. This Chen Jinghao is truly ruthless. Even though the food supply wasn't entirely depleted, he'd already begun preparing for the future, viewing his subordinates' corpses as emergency rations. Absolutely inhumane. I thought to myself, this guy better not mess with me again. Otherwise, it won't just end with losing a leg. The next day, there was a sudden and frantic plea for help in the new group chat. The person begging for help? None other than little fairy Lu Tiantian from the day before. I could hear her desperate cries. Help! Chen Jinghao is breaking down my door. She'd completely dropped the arrogant attitude from yesterday, begging Uncle Yu to step up and save her. Uncle Yu was kind-hearted, but he wasn't stupid. There's no way he would risk his life for nothing at a time like this. If only everyone had banded together yesterday and listened to him, perhaps they might have had a chance to take down Chen Jinghao. But now, the group was silent. No one responded. Some even mocked her. Weren't you bragging about how powerful you were yesterday? Go fight them off yourself. Before long, her door was smashed open. The neighborhood had been sealed off for half a month, and Chen Jinghao and his men were on the edge of madness. Lu Tiantian was dragged out of her home. Seeing this, Fang Yiqing and Lin Kaining were utterly panicked. They realized that if they didn't hide in my place soon, they'd be next. They remembered Zhou Peng, the guy who was always eager to please them, and through him, they got in touch with Wang Min on the 18th floor. Wang Min was Zhou Peng's cousin, an independent, no-nonsense woman. Living with her were a few of her colleagues and friends, and they decided to form an alliance to protect themselves. The only reason Wang Min let the two women move in with her was because they agreed to convince me to let everyone relocate to my home. Before long, they created a group chat and tried to talk me into letting them come over, saying we should band together to fend off the insane Chen Jinghao. They pitched how my place had the perfect vantage point from the balcony and a reinforced front door, making it an ideal stronghold. I chuckled coldly at their little schemes. Even from 10 floors up, I could hear their thoughts plain as day. I left them a voice message without hesitation. I'm doing perfectly fine on my own. Don't even dream about it. Right after that, one of Wang Min's colleagues, a bespectacled guy named Sun Jichao, started preaching at me from his moral high ground. Everyone's lives are on the line. How can you stand by and do nothing? There are 7 or 8 lives here. I recognized every single one of them, but remembering how they'd caused my death in my previous life made any trace of sympathy for them impossible. After all, in the last life, many of the neighbors who partook in consuming my flesh and blood were right there in that group. It's the apocalypse, talking to me about humanity now. The only thing that matters is survival. I sent another voice message right away. You people hold 0 value to me. Your fight with Chen Jinghao has nothing to do with me. Then, I exited the group chat without a second thought. Trying to leech off of me. Ridiculous. As long as I abandon morality, no one can use morality to guilt-trip me. Fang Yiqing cursed in the chat. Zhang Yi, you heartless piece of crap. Meanwhile, Wang Min glared coldly at Fang Yiqing and Lin Kaining and said, I let you in because of my cousin Zhou Peng. But if you can't convince Zhang Yi to help, I never would have agreed in the first place. With the looming threat of being kicked out, Fang Yiqing and Lin Kaining started to panic. They hurriedly pulled out some photos I'd shared earlier, showing off wine, steak, and all kinds of luxurious food. And most importantly, there was even a fireplace in the background. Everyone stared at the photo, wide-eyed. The bespectacled Sun Jichao nudged up his glasses and said, Well, if he won't agree, we'll just take matters into our own hands. Someone selfish like that deserves to be dealt with using special tactics. A guy with dyed yellow hair immediately chimed in. Exactly. I used to work for a locksmith company. There's no lock I can't crack. At that, Fang Yiqing nearly jumped for joy. In her mind, she silently cursed me. Zhang Yi, you scumbag. Once your front door is no longer your salvation, let's see if you can keep acting high and mighty. And to think, after I dumped dirty water on them last time, Now they even brought umbrellas, foolishly thinking that would protect them. At this moment, Fang Yiqing was already fantasizing about how to take her revenge once she broke through my door. Watching them from my surveillance camera, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Did they truly think they could break through my door with such cheap tricks? This is a door equipped with 10 layers of security, as secure as a bank vault. Did they think the million-dollar security company I hired was for nothing? I gently pressed the switch on the defense system. The locksmith wannabe yellow-haired guy, who had been focused on picking the lock, was instantly. High voltage surged through his body. After a burst of crackling sounds, smoke began to rise from his charred figure, accompanied by the acrid stench of burned flesh. His arm stuck directly to the metal door handle, now burned to cinders. Fang Yiqing let out a blood-curdling scream, her terror causing her to wet her pants on the spot. The man with the glasses was overcome with rage upon witnessing the gruesome death of his longtime brother-in-arms before his very eyes. He roared through the door in fury. "Zhang Yi, you beast! If you've got the guts, come out and face me one-on-one." Wang Min shouted angrily as well. "We came here in good faith to discuss working together, and this is how you repay us? Killing someone in cold blood. You're even worse than that devil Chen Zhenghao." I stood there, holding a freshly roasted chicken in one hand, replying coldly, "Cut the act. What cooperation are you talking about? You lot are here to break down my door, kill me, and take over my house to enjoy the safety of this bunker I built, aren't you? Spare me the fake kindness about letting me have the master bedroom or putting me in charge once you're inside. Think about it. This is my home. Who are you to come here and dictate terms in my house? If you've got the nerve, come on, try me." As I spoke, my crossbow was already loaded. Through the surveillance cameras, I watched their every move. If that's how they want to play it, fine. Let's play. The hunt begins. A cold, merciless smile crept onto my face as I aimed through the shooting slot and loosed an arrow with a whistle. The man with the glasses took the shot directly in his right arm. Zhou Peng and another man rushed to his aid. Without a hurry, I reloaded and fired off 2 more arrows. In an instant, all 3 men had arrows lodged in their arms. Panicking, they scrambled and fled in terror. I had deliberately avoided their vital areas. I wanted them to die slowly, in agony and fear. Like wounded dogs, they retreated and started to grasp just how much danger they were in. Zhang Yi is not messing around, he's playing for keeps. It was then that Wang Min noticed, to her horror, that the arrows were all rusted. They understood the grim reality. They were doomed without antibiotics. If their wounds got infected, it'd mean certain death. The man with the glasses was paralyzed by the panic of realization, the shadow of death creeping over him. Suddenly, with a sharp smack, Wang Min slapped Fang Yiqing across the face in fury. "TCH. This is all your fault. If you knew he had a crossbow, why didn't you tell us earlier? Are you trying to get us all killed?" Fang Yiqing, stunned by the slap, held her cheek, tears streaming as she whimpered. I didn't know why he had a crossbow either. Last time, he just splashed us with dirty water, I swear." Witnessing his beloved goddess being slapped by her cousin, Zhou Peng gritted his teeth through the pain and stepped forward to shield her. "Please, cousin, calm down. Yiqing is just an innocent girl. How could she possibly know these things?" Wang Min looked at her cousin, dumbfounded by his idiocy, nearly spitting blood from exasperation. She screamed, "All of you get out." At this moment, the man with the glasses stepped up, trying to reason with her. "Let's not lose it. We're all injured right now, and we need help. It's best to keep them here for now." Realizing their precarious position, the 2 women immediately caught on and hurried to tend to their wounds, silently doing what they could to stay useful. Wang Min wasted no time and dialed Dr. Zhou's number. Dr. Zhou Kuer arrived promptly with a medical kit, not wasting a second. "Arrow wounds again?" she asked with concern, inspecting their injuries. "These wounds are deep. Without proper surgical equipment and urgent care, this could turn critical." Wang Min, usually tough as nails, couldn't hold back her tears at this point. After all, these were her closest friends and her dear cousin. Through sobs of frustration, she cursed. "Zhang Yi, you monster. Sure, we wanted to take your house, but we never intended to kill you." Hearing the name Zhang Yi, Zhou Kuer's eyes narrowed in thought. She vaguely recalled someone matching the description, not the type you'd expect to be this ruthless. But from their conversation, She began piecing the story together. After a moment, she sighed. These people didn't really deserve much sympathy either. Right now, Jokur said calmly, the most critical thing is to find some antibiotics. If we don't, their lives are at serious risk. At that moment, Fang Yiqing's eyes lit up as though she'd remembered something. Excitedly, she shouted, medicine. I remember Zhang Yi has medicine. About a month ago, Zhang Yi went nuts stockpiling supplies. I saw medications being delivered to his home. He has to have antibiotics. The man with the glasses, who had been drowning in despair, suddenly seemed to cling to this slim thread of hope. Like a man grasping his last lifeline, his eyes reignited with determination. Jokur mulled it over. Antibiotics are basic essentials. If he really prepared in advance for some kind of disaster, he's bound to have a stockpile. The man with the glasses was trembling all over in pain. Then what are we waiting for? Quick, go find Zhang Yi to get the medicine. He's the reason we're in this mess. He has to hand over the medicine to save me. Wang Min knew well that this was far from being that simple. Just moments ago, Zhang Yi had clearly tried to kill them. How could he possibly be persuaded to hand over the medicine now? Yet, Fang Yiqing brazenly argued, it's not like we were trying to harm him. We just wanted to go inside and take a few supplies. We weren't planning to take everything. We'd even leave some for him. Instead, he's the one being unreasonable, trying to kill us. Justice, clearly, is on our side. Zhou Kuer listened to this in silence, her face clearly expressing disbelief. This girl's sense of logic was truly unique. But it wasn't her problem, so she chose not to argue. She simply took out the medical kit and prepared to at least stop some of their bleeding. Unfortunately, the meds in the kit were running out. It had already been mostly used up on Chun Jinghao's injuries earlier. Now, with no real medicine left, all Zhou Kuer could do was to pull out the arrows and haphazardly bandage their wounds. It wasn't a solution, but at least it might make their deaths a bit less painful. Even in their weakened state, none of them saw any fault in their actions. Everything they did, they justified as a means of survival. In their hearts, they placed the blame squarely on Zhang Yi. To them, he was selfish. How could he hoard such excellent survival resources all for himself in a time like this? At that moment, Wang Min suddenly pointed at Fang Yiqing and said, getting the medicine, it's up to you. This whole mess started because of you. Plus, I've heard that Zhang Yi used to have a thing for you. So if anyone can do it, it's you. The bespectacled man, with what strength he had left, managed a weak nod in agreement. Even Zhou Peng, though visibly reluctant to send his goddess to beg his rival, finally staggered forward. Overwhelmed by the searing pain in his arm, he knew this might be their final shot. He said shakily, in a pleading tone, please, only you can do this, Yiqing. I mean, if I don't make it, who'll protect you? Hearing this, Fang Yiqing had no choice. She felt bitter and reluctant, but she also knew her current position. She was still useful to Zhou Peng. Without that, she'd be cast out by Wang Min, and who knows what fate would await her then. So, forcing herself to muster the courage, Fang Yiqing called my number. Speaking through sobs, she pleaded, Wang Min's colleague. He was electrocuted to death by you. The other three, you shot them with arrows. Without medicine, they're all going to die soon. Could you please give them some medicine? On the other end of the call, I just chuckled coldly and replied without emotion. Everyone dies eventually. Whether it's sooner or later, does it really make a difference? You don't seriously believe anyone's making it out of this frozen apocalypse alive, do you? The snow's now over 10 meters deep, and it's only a matter of time before everyone's supplies run out. Freezing or starving to death is inevitable. Fang Yiqing, trembling with desperation, sobbed as she begged. Zhang Yi, please, just give me one chance. I know I shouldn't have rejected you before. That was my fault. But now they're dying. The world's so cruel right now. Shouldn't we be helping each other instead of fighting? I'm begging you, don't be this heartless, please. Don't tell me their deaths would make you happy. To her dismay, I firmly and unapologetically replied, that's exactly right. Their deaths do bring me joy. Hearing this, Wang Min grabbed the phone, her rage bubbling over. Zhang Yi, don't go too far. We're neighbors for God's sake. Show a little decency. Leave some room for reconciliation. If you give us medicine this time, I swear I, Wang Min, will repay you 100-fold. But my voice dripped with disdain as I answered. Spare me the speech about owing me one. When I shot those arrows, I had already decided. My goal was, and still is, for them to suffer slow deaths from infection. That's the whole point. The body of one of your comrades is still lying out front of my door. The grudge between us is already set in stone. And now you expect me to save the very people who try to kill me? To keep threats alive? You're nothing if not naive. Wang Min tried to reason. We aren't those kinds of people. But I cut her off. A cruel idea struck me, and I knew their phone was on speaker. Feigning tenderness, I said, for the sake of how I once felt about Iching, I might consider it. I'll allow only her to come over. As for the rest of you, I'd rather not be burdened by unnecessary baggage. Hearing this, Fang Iching nearly leapt for joy. The mere thought of escaping her current hell had her almost trembling with excitement. She immediately grabbed the phone and, with an almost sickly sweet tone, gushed, "Zhang Yi, I'll come over right away. Whatever you say goes. I'll listen to everything you tell me." Seeing me agree to let Fang Iching move in, Lin Caning, who had been standing nearby, hurriedly chimed in, insisting that she be allowed to come along. But I responded coldly, as though carefully recalling my thoughts. I only love Iching. Anyone else, just extra baggage. Not worth the trouble. Don't you agree, Iching? The moment these words left my mouth, the expressions of everyone in the room shifted drastically. They had all hoped that Fang Iching would latch onto me, bringing back some medicine so they could benefit as well. But judging by my tone, I had no intention of looking back or taking them along. At that moment, Fang Iching's face flushed red with excitement. The thought of escaping her hellish life consumed her mind. She couldn't spare a second to consider the people surrounding her. Without hesitation, she turned and bolted toward the door. Seeing this, her best friend, Lin Caning, grabbed hold of her arm. Fang Iching swung her hand sharply, landing a slap on Lin Caning's face. "Get out of my way, you wretch. I'm going after my happiness." But her words had barely settled before Wang Min stepped up and delivered 2 resounding slaps to her. "You bitch. After causing us so much harm, with people dead and injured because of you, now you think you can just leave us behind to enjoy life? Dream on." Zhou Peng, who was in the midst of drawing his bow, was so furious his eyes turned red. "Iching, didn't you tell me I was the one you loved most? That you wanted to have lots of kids with me?" Fang Iching gritted her teeth and defiantly replied, "Is it wrong for me to seek happiness? It's better to cling to Zhang Yi, securing a chance for survival, than wasting away here with all of you until the supplies run out. You're a good person," she added, her tone almost patronizing. "You should understand me. If you truly loved someone, wouldn't you want them to be happy? Though I know you've always treated me well, you're on the verge of dying. Wouldn't it be better to let me go and pursue a better life while I still can?" Zhou Peng, cold sweat dripping down his back, was rendered speechless. His legs buckled as he slumped to the ground. Wang Min hurried to comfort her cousin. "This kind of woman isn't worth all the sacrifices you've made for her. Focus on your health. That's what matters now." At that moment, Lin Caning flung herself toward Fang Iching again. "Iching, you can't leave me behind," she cried, tackling her to the ground and then blocking the door. "If we're going to suffer, we'll suffer together. There's no way I'm letting you go off to live the good life all by yourself." Meanwhile, Dr. Zhou stood off to the side, utterly unimpressed by the circus unfolding before him. With a weary tone, he stated, "I've already stopped the bleeding from their wounds as best I can. But without proper medicine, the chances of infection are high. Brace yourselves for the worst." As he spoke, the bespectacled man struggling in the corner managed to prop himself up. "We must get the medicine from Zhang Yi. If we don't, the 3 of us are as good as dead." Then, as if a sinister thought had taken root, he adjusted his glasses and his lips curled into a wicked smile. "I might just have an idea, a desperate one, but it's worth a shot." Everyone's eyes lit up. Whatever the plan was, they had nothing to lose at this point. Doing nothing was as good as signing their death warrants. The bespectacled man straightened up, his scheming mind laid bare. Zhang Yi's clearly hoarding a ton of supplies, food, a working fireplace, and probably enough fuel to outlast this entire disaster. And luckily for us, only a few of us know this information so far. But let's be realistic. The handful of us here can't possibly break into Zhang Yi's place by ourselves. So why not spread the word? Let everyone in the building know he's sitting on a mountain of resources. If we can't handle this on our own, surely hundreds of neighbors can, don't you think? Plus, there's that lunatic Chen Jinghao. He has a gun, doesn't he? The moment they break into his apartment, all we have to do is snag some medicine and food in the chaos. Simple as that. The others quickly nodded in agreement. But Fang Yiqing, livid, retorted, "How can you be so shameless? How dare you sabotage me and Zhang Yiji's bright future? I'm about to move in with him." Without missing a beat, Wang Min stepped up and slapped her several more times. "You little fox, this is all your fault to begin with, and now you have the audacity to scream and shout." Yet once again, the now thoroughly broken Zhou Peng stepped between her and Fang Yiqing. "Sis, stop it. I truly love Yiqing." His voice quivered with sheer desperation. "I believe that as long as I keep giving, one day she'll feel my sincerity. One day, she'll love me back." Turning to the woman who clearly despised him, he vowed, "Don't be afraid. I'm here for you." Wang Min could only gape at her foolish cousin, stewing in silent frustration at his sheer stupidity. The rest of the group exchanged glances, each looking more exasperated than the last. As for Fang Yiqing, she did nothing to mask her revulsion toward Zhou Peng. Deep down, she despised him even more for his pathetic devotion. Meanwhile, Wang Min had already taken every photo and video I'd ever posted, uploading them to the building's community group chat. She made sure to emphasize that these were all very recent screenshots. Predictably, the group chat exploded in outrage. While everyone else endured the brutal cold and hunger, I was basking in relative luxury. My neighbors immediately began hurling accusations, claiming I'd hoarded supplies because I'd somehow known about the snowstorm in advance and never shared the warning. They called me selfish, said I owed them. I leisurely scrolled through the flood of messages, my amusement only growing. It was fascinating to see just how ugly human nature could become. Some begged and played the victim. Others tried to guilt-trip me with moral arguments. There are those who try reasoning with me and even resort to threats. But in the end, their ultimate goal is clear. Each one of them just wants a piece of what's mine. I glanced at a message from Aunt Lin. "I'm the head of the neighborhood committee and one of the elders of this building. Hand over all your supplies right now, and I'll distribute them to the neighbors." How ridiculous. A simple errand runner suddenly promoted herself to committee head. Then there's that stay-at-home mom, Xieli, who upped the absurdity by saying her son looks just like me. She even suggested I become the kid's godfather, or, failing that, she would recognize me as her own godfather. As if that wasn't enough, the rich second-generation heir, Su Hao, promised to hand over his entire billion-dollar inheritance if only I'd let him move into my home. Unbelievably, some women even sent me explicit photos. I barely spared them a glance. I wasn't interested. Reading through the continuous flood of notifications tagging me in the group, I finally responded curtly with 5 words. "Do I even know you?" Truth be told, in my previous life, I had once been kind-hearted enough to open my doors to these neighbors. But all that did was lead me to my death at the hands of an axe. They couldn't wait to carve up my body while I was still drawing my last breath. That's why, now that I've been given another chance at life, I've made up my mind. I'll make a sport out of playing these pitiful, hateful parasites for fools. When they realized I wouldn't give in, the group chat devolved into hysterical threats and curses. I set my phone aside and walked to the window. Pulling a bottle of 1983 vintage red wine from my storage space, I paired it with a serving of premium French foie gras, the perfect combination. Sipping on the wine, I admired the snowy wonderland outside. The snowstorm had been raging for over half a month now. Staying indoors day and night was getting a little dull. It seemed like it was time to stretch my legs a bit. Lucky for me, my dimensional space held a snowmobile and extreme cold weather gear. Once most of the residents of this building meet their demise, the world outside will finally be safe for me to explore. Just as I was basking in the peaceful view, I received a private message on my phone. It was from Zhou Ku. She was widely recognized as the goddess of the complex and a brilliant, gorgeous doctor at Tianhai City People's Hospital. Her tall and elegant figure, combined with her aloof, almost untouchable demeanor, meant that every time we crossed paths in the elevator, I couldn't help but steal a glance or two. I did somewhat admire her. Unlike the rest of these desperate leeches, she hadn't resorted to sob stories or inappropriate pictures. Instead, she calmly suggested a trade. In times like these, having a skilled doctor around could be invaluable. Maybe I could keep her close, to take care of me and my crew. Still, the more captivating a woman, the more dangerous she tends to be, and the higher the likelihood of betrayal. In my last life, Joka perished because she gave away food to a young mother. At the time, her kindness made me see a brighter side of humanity. But now, unless I'm absolutely certain about her loyalty, I wouldn't let her step even 1 foot past my door. After considering it for a moment, I replied, "If you want to trade with me, you'd better show me you're serious." A long silence. Then, with a trace of desperation, Joku responded, "Think of it as advance payment for medical services. Please, I don't think I can last much longer. I can give you some food and medicine," I wrote back. "But in the apocalypse, nothing is free. We trade value for value. So, you'll have to agree to a condition." She replied almost instantly, "What condition?" A cold smile crept across my face. "I expect the neighbors will soon lose their patience and try to storm my apartment. I want you to act as my informant, share intel on their plans and movements. Here's the deal. You have 2 choices. Be loyal to me and betray your neighbors, or stick to your morals and face the consequences, death. The choice is yours." In the end, this goddess of a doctor bowed her head to me. But that bashful, almost flirtatious look on her face, what even was that? No doubt, her professional ethics made this decision hard for her. Too bad, she didn't really have a choice. What I was offering was survival. Besides, her neighbors weren't exactly saints. Their jealousy-fueled plot to rob me hardly counted as just. I addressed her again. "So, here's how it's going to work. You'll provide me with useful information, and I'll give you the supplies you need. You're smart. I don't think I need to spell out the details for you." Joku understood perfectly. She knew very well that her survival now hinged entirely on staying in my good graces. With that settled, I diverted my attention back to the main group chat. It was still brimming with denunciations of me. Some people, clearly at their wits' end, had reverted to incoherent name-calling. I replied provocatively with just one word: "Mad." That single word ignited the chat into an inferno of curses. Eventually, however, the noise began to fade. No doubt they'd started a new group without me. I took a deep breath and felt an odd mix of tension and exhilaration. Even though I knew my home was a fortress, impossible to breach, the thought of facing a desperate mob of thousands still stirred something restless inside me. Lin He, saying I wasn't nervous at all would be a blatant lie. Sure enough, Joku immediately messaged me. That guy with the glasses pulled everyone alive in the building, except me, into another group. He even included Chen Jinghao. Chen Jinghao spoke up in that group chat. "Right now, our common enemy is Zhang Yi. The supplies in his home are probably more than all of ours combined. If we can break into his place, we'll have access to a massive stockpile. But let me make this clear now. I get half of everything we take." As soon as he said that, no one objected. Even though Chen Jinghao only had 6 people under his command, the neighbors found his terms surprisingly fair. In their minds, he has guns and could have just taken everything. But instead, he's offering us half? What a generous guy. The man with glasses also chimed in, stirring up the crowd further. "We must let go of past conflicts and focus on what's urgent. Taking down Zhang Yi and recovering the supplies that should rightfully belong to us as a community." Joka kept me posted on every last move they made. Even Uncle Yu, the security guard, messaged me in a hurry, urging me to run. "They've completely lost it," he said. I simply replied with a calm, "Noted." Then I told them both to stay put and watch how this all played out. Soon, I could feel the faint vibrations shaking through the building. It seemed like every single neighbor, driven into a frenzy, was rushing up to my apartment on the 24th floor. Fueled by Chun Jinghao's provocations, they were acting absolutely insane. Through my monitor, I saw dozens of them with sledgehammers, slamming away at my front door like maniacs. But I noticed neither Chen Jinghao nor the glasses guy were anywhere in sight. Clearly, they had orchestrated this from a safe distance, using these irrational neighbors as cannon fodder. With no hesitation, I pressed the high-voltage button. In an instant, the people wielding sledgehammers were electrocuted, their bodies sticking to the door. The current even jumped to several others nearby. After a series of crackling sounds, a few of them collapsed lifelessly to the floor, leaving the hallway thick with the sharp scent of burnt flesh. This grisly scene stunned the rest. Frozen in fear, they began retreating. But Chen Jinghao had already blocked the stairwell with his men, deliberately standing at the only escape route. He pulled out a gun and, glaring at the crowd, menacingly growled, "Turn around and keep smashing that door." The hallway was their only way out, and that was exactly why Chen Jinghao was there, forcing them to risk their lives. His goal was obvious: to sacrifice the neighbors, deplete my defenses, and then sweep in behind a thin veneer of righteousness to seize my supplies. The whole thing was a shameless power play, plain and simple. Fearing for their own lives, the neighbors hesitated, but then the glasses guy stepped forward, shouting, "Look at this devil. He just electrocuted our dear neighbors to death. This kind of monster doesn't deserve to live so comfortably in that apartment. We are the righteous ones here. Today, no matter what, we must seek justice for the fallen." He paused for effect before adding, "And remember, tons of supplies are waiting just behind that door. Once we bring it down, it'll all belong to our collective." By this point, the neighbors were too dazed to think critically. Right and wrong blurred into nothingness. Egged on by the glasses guy, they suddenly reignited with reckless determination. After all, they were starving, barely surviving for over a month. They figured, if they were going to die anyway, they might as well gamble everything for a chance at food. Someone quickly dragged in a massive wooden beam, and several men hoisted it together, charging my door with full force. The loud thuds of wood smashing against metal were deafening. I yawned and took a sip of my wine, deciding to put on some music to accompany the chaos outside. Consider it a bit of mood enhancement for their efforts. The music unnerved the neighbors even more. To them, it was blatant mockery, a provocation. Furious, they pushed their rage to the limits, smashing the door with everything they had. For 2.5 hours, they went at it relentlessly. My door, however, remained utterly intact. Not just barely standing. No, there wasn't even the faintest sign of damage aside from a few superficial scratches. The neighbors were utterly crushed. Exhausted, they collapsed onto the floor in despair. What kind of person installs this type of door in their home? Why was it so indestructible? At this rate, they'd have to keep smashing for 2.5 years minimally. Then, a bank employee shuffled forward to inspect the situation. Upon closer examination, his eyes widened in disbelief. He turned to everyone and exclaimed, "This door, it's the same type we use in bank vaults. A door of this caliber, forget about. Layers of thickly fortified steel plating to encase the house completely. Every inch of this place was designed to withstand the most desperate attacks." I sipped my wine and smirked, finding their futile efforts both amusing and pathetic. It was clear the neighbors had been driven mad by hunger and despair, but honestly, that wasn't my problem. I had planned carefully, stocked up thoroughly, and thought of every contingency for a situation like this. As the pounding on various surfaces of my iron fortress continued, I calmly activated the noise-canceling system to drown out their chaos. With the echoes of classical music filling my sanctuary, I leaned back into my chair, enjoying this peculiar performance of desperation outside. Meanwhile, the bespectacled man raged like a madman, screaming at the top of his lungs. Why? Why would anyone reinforce their walls with steel? It's like he knew this would happen. He built this tomb of his because he knew the snowstorm was coming. That selfish bastard planned to keep everything for himself. The crowd erupted again, furious cries echoing through the hallways. "You heartless monster," they shouted. "How could you not warn us? How could you hoard supplies while your neighbors starve? Rot in hell, you scum." Emotions ran high as despair turned into hatred. Some dropped to their knees, crying and cursing my name, praying that I would meet my end for what they perceived as my selfishness. Yet not everyone had lost their nerve. The old man, Chen Jinghao, had always been a tough nut. He barked orders with authority, his calm but commanding voice silencing the chaotic mob for a brief moment. "Stop whining like a bunch of cowards," he snapped. "Unless you want me to put you out of your misery myself, you'd better pick yourselves up." So what if his walls are steel? There's a ceiling too, isn't there? And don't forget the floor under our feet. Keep smashing. Any weakness will do. From my monitor, I couldn't help but acknowledge Jinghao's determination with a chuckle. He's got guts, I muttered to myself. But of course, I wasn't about to take any chances. Every possible vulnerability of my fortress had been accounted for. Floors, ceiling, and even hidden cavities, solid steel, every bit of it. The neighbors' insanity-driven attempts to breach my stronghold had me wondering just how far they'd actually push themselves before finally collapsing in exhaustion. Despite using every possible method, all their efforts only deepened their sense of despair. In the end, they discovered in utter hopelessness that my home truly was an airtight iron fortress. The man with glasses was now panicking completely. He knew that if the wound on his arm didn't get treated with medicine soon, he probably wouldn't make it past 3 more days. At this point, he could even smell the putrid scent of rot coming from his own arm. Utterly desperate, he threw his head back and roared into the sky. My destiny lies in my own hands, not in the heavens. I just don't believe there's not a single flaw in this damn house. That blasted Zhangyi. Why can't he be a little more generous and sacrifice himself to save his lovely neighbors like us? By this point, his mental state had genuinely reached the edge of insanity. The rest of the neighbors exchanged hopeless, uneasy glances. And at nearly the same moment, an unspeakable thought crept into every one of their minds. The neighbors who had just been electrocuted smelled kind of tempting. Maybe with a little seasoning. None of them dared pursue the thought any further. In the end, reason managed to triumph over hunger for now. But deep down, they all knew. Once such a notion emerges, if things were to reach a point of no return, this option might just become inevitable. When everyone seemed at their wits' end, the young couple next door stood up and proposed. What if we try going through the balcony to break the glass? Our balcony has a view of their balcony. Their balcony is just a giant floor-to-ceiling window. The glass shouldn't be too hard to smash. Hearing this, the neighbors latched onto the idea as though it were their last hope, suddenly reinvigorated with desperate energy yet again. Before long, they used a wooden board to connect the balconies, armed themselves with various tools, and arrived at my balcony, determined. Inside, I sipped my freshly brewed coffee, unhurried, as I watched them from the safety of my home. I couldn't help but think, if this were a zombie apocalypse, this lot is probably exactly what it would look like. As they hammered away at the glass, they shouted in fury, "You selfish monster! If you open the window yourself right now, maybe we'd have spared your life." Seeing this, I placed my coffee on the table and calmly stood up. Who told you that glass can simply be shattered? This particular glass panel was custom ordered at significant expense, reinforced bulletproof glass. The same material used for motorcades of world leaders in foreign countries, though not even half the thickness of what's in my home. This level of glass. Forget bullets, it can withstand freaking bombs. Oh, and by the way, take a good look. This is made in Dragon Kingdom. Without breaking a sweat, I walked towards the kitchen, grabbed an empty wine bottle from last night, filled it with gasoline, and casually fashioned a Molotov cocktail, a little something to warm up my shivering neighbors. Moments later, an opening appeared in the ceiling above the balcony outside. Down came the Molotov. By the time the neighbors realized what was about to happen, it was already too late. With a loud crash, the bottle shattered upon impact, dousing the balcony with its contents. Paired with the minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit temperature and the sudden surge of roaring flames, the scene transformed into a harrowing blend of fire and ice in an instant. The small balcony was quickly engulfed by flames. Some, faced with the terrifying blaze, chose to leap directly off the balcony. I stood by the window, a playful smirk on my face as I admired the beautiful view. At that moment, a man with a neatly parted hairstyle lunged at the glass, pressing his disfigured, horrifyingly desperate face against it, pleading, "Help me. Please, save me. Weren't you the loudest one threatening me earlier?" I sneered, meeting his eyes coldly, before lighting another Molotov in my hand. "Save you? Die and rot, scumbag." As the remaining neighbors attempted to flee back across the wood plank bridge, they were immediately stopped by the guy with the glasses, who stood at the front. "You're dead anyway. Even if you extinguish the fire now, the burns will infect. You're as good as dead. Stay back, don't drag us down with you." A few only had minor burns, just their clothes caught fire, nothing critical, but Glasses guy still swung a hammer wildly, blocking their retreat. This forced those with severe burns, writhing in unbearable agony, to eventually jump to their deaths off the balcony. The few neighbors left on my balcony, though, were burned alive, reduced to little more than charred remains. Ironically, the The flaming wooden plank bridge connecting the balconies now became an unusual source of warmth for the remaining survivors. Some reached out their hands to soak in the fire's heat, faces creeping with stolen half-smiles, as though fearful that others might catch them enjoying it. Realizing brute force wouldn't work, the survivors opted to switch tactics, going soft. They quickly tossed away their weapons, crawled over to my floor-to-ceiling window, and, with a loud thud, dropped to their knees. Like begging dogs, they wailed and cried, "Please, Zhang-yi, I don't want to die." One by one, more of them knelt, following suit. Some frantically kowtowed, others slapped themselves repeatedly across the face. The cacophony of pleading voices became an overwhelming chorus. Some people even knelt so hard their foreheads were bleeding. The heartbreaking sight could make anyone feel gutted just seeing it. I looked at them, my face full of sympathy, and said, "Come on, don't be like this. Watching you makes me feel uncomfortable. But whenever I feel uneasy, I just want to eat something." With that, I picked up the freshly cooked bowl of snail noodles and, right in front of them, loudly slurped it down. At that moment, the slurp, slurp sound of me enjoying the noodles became the most melodious noise in the world to those neighbors' ears. I set down the half-eaten bowl and spoke. "Now, I'll give you all an opportunity. If you can pull this off, I'll provide unlimited snail noodles for a whole week. Go, bring me Chun Jinghao's head." As soon as I said this, everyone froze. Chun Jinghao wasn't just anyone. He had a gun and kept a few men by his side for protection. Taking him down wouldn't be easy. But compared to dealing with me, going after Chun Jinghao seemed like the easier choice. The neighbors' vacant eyes slowly turned toward Chun Jinghao, their stares resembling those of wolves eyeing a large, juicy steak. Chun Jinghao, noticing the neighbors suddenly standing up, smirked and said, "Why'd you stop? Keep lamenting your misery." He hadn't heard what I had whispered to them. Suddenly, Chun Jinghao felt a chill down his spine, like 1,000 tiny needles pricking him. He whipped around to catch the neighbors casting him eerie, unreadable glances. Startled, he instinctively retreated into a corner, gun cocked and ready to fire. The neighbors hesitated to make a move, their courage wavering at the sight of the loaded firearm. It wasn't until then that Chun Jinghao realized it was that damn Zhang Yi who had posted a bounty in the residential group chat, putting an actual price on his head. Seeing these neighbors with expressions like zombies hungry for blood, Chun Jinghao became visibly alarmed, quickly fleeing the scene. The next day, Chun Jinghao ordered 2 of his men to dig through the snow outside for clean water while he, clutching his gun tightly, watched over them and rushed their actions. Chun Jinghao was no amateur. He knew very well that if he could ambush others while fetching water, those desperate neighbors blinded by the bounty might also be plotting an attack on him at the very same time. He had to move quickly, but just as they were about to head back to safety, a couple of neighbors, lying in ambush, seized their moment and charged out wielding cleavers. One of Chun Jinghao's men, hearing the commotion, spun around just in time to see 2 frenzied neighbors charging in, cleavers raised high. "Boss, behind you. Watch out." Bang, bang. 2 gunshots pierced through the icy silence of the neighborhood. The 2 assailants fell into pools of their own blood. It was obvious. The assassination attempt on Chun Jinghao had failed. Chun Jinghao gripped his gun tightly, panting heavily as a look of terror washed over his face. "Coming for me? You must have a death wish." He quickly ordered his men to take photos of the 2 bloodied bodies and upload them to the group chat. This is what happens when you mess with Chun Jinghao. Suddenly, one of his bald henchmen shouted, "Boss, you've been stabbed in the back." A long gash, half a meter in length, was now visible on Chun Jinghao's back. Perhaps due to the adrenaline coursing through his system earlier, he hadn't even felt the pain. But upon hearing the words, Chun Jinghao immediately broke out in a cold sweat and began to cry in panic. "Those sneaky bastards, attacking me from behind like cowards." Feeling desperate, he quickly dialed Zhou Kuer's number while one of his men helped him limp back to an apartment. Before long, Dr. Zhou arrived at Chun Jinghao's place with her medical bag in tow. Faced with this cold-blooded man, she had no choice but to comply in order to survive. However, she made her stance very clear. "My services aren't free." Last time, treating his arrow wound had earned her just a small packet of biscuits. This time, one of his bald henchmen brought over a steaming bowl of meat soup and offered, "Dr. Zhou, Shall we save you some of this?" As a medical professional, she immediately recognized what kind of meat it was. Fighting the urge to vomit, she replied coldly, "No thanks. Not in my lifetime. I, Zhou Kuer, would rather starve to death, die in the streets, or throw myself off this building before I touch your food." Chen Jinghao, understanding the value of having a doctor around in these post-apocalyptic conditions, gave her a warm yet menacing look and said, "You mustn't die. If sacrifices need to be made, you'll be the last one to go." It was no secret that Chen Jinghao had long harbored inappropriate thoughts about Zhou Kuer. If it weren't for her being essential to his survival right now, he would have acted on his urges already. Once the wound was treated, Zhou Kuer slapped away Chen Jinghao's wandering hands and prepared to leave. But one of his henchmen quickly blocked her path. Chen Jinghao interjected, "Until I've made a full recovery, you're not going anywhere." Deep down, he was petrified. With so many eyes watching and waiting to pounce, he couldn't afford to be without a doctor by his side. Zhou Kuer had no option but to sit silently in a corner. For now, Chen Jinghao clutched his gun tightly, day and night, while whispering strategies with his men. The next course of action. The current situation is extremely unfavorable for them. Meanwhile, my home is like a turtle shell, utterly impenetrable. In the end, they unanimously decided to move next door to me and wait for an opportunity to strike. Plus, living higher up would be relatively safer. Throughout the entire discussion, Zhou Kuer heard every word clearly. She immediately excused herself to the restroom and sent me a message from there. After listening to her, I remained indifferent. They think they can lure me out? We'll see how I outlast them one by one. Before long, Chen Jinghao barged into the young couple's home with his supplies. The couple, realizing their disadvantage, tactfully handed over their apartment while hiding the remainder of their food on their bodies. Trembling, they prepared to leave. But they didn't get far. Asterisk bang. Bang. Asterisk 2 muffled gunshots later, the couple collapsed. One of Chen's men even stepped forward to stab them dozens of times. Standing nearby, Zhou Kuer was utterly stunned. Although she was a doctor, it was her first time witnessing someone killed before her eyes. As for Chen Jinghao, he wore a smug expression. "Meat delivered right to our doorstep. How could I let them just walk away?" At this point, Chen Jinghao had completely lost any respect for life, treating murder as casually as cutting grass. With a dark, menacing gaze, he coldly told Zhou Kuer that, given the dire circumstances, he had no choice but to resort to such brutal tactics. Otherwise, the other neighbors might come at him with knives next. In the days that followed, the sound of tap-tap on my walls became an ever-present refrain. I knew what they were doing. The remaining thugs were relentlessly trying to identify a weak point in my defenses. They monitored my home 24/7, convinced that sooner or later, I'd have to come out to fetch snow for water or take out the trash. Through my surveillance cameras, I noticed that Chen Jinghao seemed to be crafting another scheme. His remaining bullets were few, and his food supplies were nearing depletion. Thanks to the bounty I'd placed on him, he was besieged on all fronts. Even sleep didn't come easy, as he clutched his gun at all times. It seemed he was now trying to coerce the other neighbors into joining his gang. Doing so would lessen the threat posed by the bounty on his head and, at the same time, expand his ranks. A sardonic grin spread across my face. This is nothing but self-destructive. In times of resource scarcity, mutual distrust only grows. Furthermore, the more people he gathers, the faster their food supplies will dwindle. He couldn't sustain this for long. I called Zhou Kuer and asked her what Chen Jinghao was scheming. In a panicked voice, she explained, "Chen Jinghao has completely lost it. He's eaten through all his supplies and is now going around recruiting able-bodied men in the community to rob the weak. They're not just stealing supplies. They're killing people too." At this point, her voice broke. Almost sobbing, she revealed she hadn't eaten or drunk anything in 2 days and felt like she was on the verge of death. "Please, can you rescue me?" Hearing her plea, I paused for a long time. The once proud, aloof female doctor now begged me in such a lowly manner. She likely didn't harbor much hope in me. After all, in times like this, everyone only looks out for themselves. Ultimately, I decided that this woman couldn't be abandoned. A chief surgeon from a top-tier hospital wasn't easy to come by, especially one I was already familiar with. But if she wanted my help, she had to pledge her loyalty to me. I immediately assigned her 2 tasks: telling her to execute them swiftly, precisely, and ruthlessly, and to deliver a gift to Chen Jinghao while she was at it. I assured her that if she passed my test, I could guarantee her survival. Meanwhile, after their failed assault on my home, Chen Jinghao's crew had lost all hope of acquiring antibiotics. Now, the wounds of 3 of them, sustained from arrow hits, were beginning to itch. When they removed the bandages, they found the wounds festering, oozing pus, and reeking of decay. The bespectacled man let out a desperate wail. "I don't want to die. I'm still a virgin, for crying out loud." Hearing this, Zhou Peng suffered a complete mental breakdown. Who the hell isn't? He begged his cousin Wang Min to ask me for help again, but Wang Min, with her own supplies nearly exhausted, could barely take care of herself. She told her cousin he'd have to figure it out on his own. With nowhere else to turn, Zhou Peng snapped. He charged to my doorstep, pounding furiously on the door. "Zhang Yi, you cowardly turtle, come out and face me if you've got the guts." Hearing his insults, I couldn't help but laugh. "You can't even keep your speech coherent, and you think you can bait me to open the door with cheap provocation?" I approached the door calmly and coldly replied from the other side. "How does it feel to be infected? That wound of yours, festering and rotting, isn't it delightful? Right now, bacteria are feasting on your flesh. Soon, they'll invade your bloodstream, circulating through your entire body. And you, well, you'll die slowly in excruciating agony." My vivid description made Zhou Peng immediately feel as if his entire body was crawling with bacteria. Exhausted from pounding on the door, Zhou Peng collapsed onto the ground. I leaned against the door, waiting for the perfect moment to, pouring myself into what I believe to be more of a local storytelling style in English. Here's the adaptation. He said to him in a cold tone, "You're going to die anyway. Even if I gave you medicine now, it wouldn't save you. Instead of wasting your last breaths, why not fulfill the wish you've left incomplete?" Despair seeped into Zhou Peng's gaze. His lifeless eyes seemed to wander before he muttered to himself, my wish is to marry Fang Yiqing. Before I die, I must make her mine." Zhou Peng leaned against the wall for support as he stumbled back to his cousin's house. With a newfound desperation, he barged straight into the room where Fang Yiqing was being held captive. His bloodshot eyes locked onto her, making Fang Yiqing jump in fright. "What do you want, Zhou Peng?" she exclaimed in shock. Despite her sharp tone, the once proud Zhou Peng fell to his knees with a loud thud. Clinging to her hand with trembling fingers, he pleaded with a haunting sincerity. "Yiqing, will you marry me?" The smell made Fang Yiqing instinctively pinch her nose, her disgust visible as she answered with disdain, "No, absolutely not. You filthy thing, get away from me." She punctuated her rejection with a hard slap across his face. "I belong to Zhang Yi. You're nothing. Not even a backup plan. At most, you're just an air pump to me." Zhou Peng's heart shattered. He had given everything to Yiqing, even his life. Yet, from the start, she had never cared for him, not even a shred of affection. Refusing to accept the truth, Zhou Peng grabbed her by the neck, shaking her violently. "Say it. Say you love me." But Fang Yiqing responded with yet another resounding slap. "Love? A rotting corpse like you? What do you even have to offer compared to my Zhang Yi?" At the same moment in another part of the house, one of Chen Jinghao's henchmen was busy in the kitchen making soup. Suddenly, Zhou Kuter stood up, volunteering to help. Chen Jinghao gave her a smug look, sneering. "So, our saintly Dr. Zhou finally caved, huh? Doesn't matter. It's all about survival." Zhou Kuter stepped into the kitchen and was instructed to chop firewood to stoke the flames. She complied silently. With energy in short supply, cooking meals in this era often required burning spare furniture. The henchman warned her not to let the fire go out before leaving her alone to take a break. It was clear they weren't guarding her too closely. Taking this chance, Zhou Kuer produced a small bottle from her pocket, unscrewing the lid to empty half a bottle of sleeping pills into the soup. Despite the stench, she stirred the concoction thoroughly. Luck seemed to be on her side as nobody noticed anything unusual. Soon, dinner was served, and everyone eagerly began gulping down soup. To earn their trust, Zhou Kuer also filled a bowl for herself. Chen Jinghao chuckled darkly as he slurped the soup. Well, look at that. Even the good doctor knows when to bow to reality." Silently, Zhou Kuer withdrew to a corner of the room. Gazing into her bowl, she mused to herself, This dosage of sleeping pills, enough to knock out even an elephant, should be lethal. And just as she calculated, drowsiness soon overtook Chen Jinghao and his gang. Before long, they were sprawled out unconscious, as lifeless as rag dolls. Zhou Kuer cautiously opened the bedroom door to confirm. Yes, they were down for the count. Wasting no time, she sent me a message. Asterisk, I've drugged them all. They're out cold. What's the next step? Asterisk. I paused to think. Just as I guessed, Zhou Kuer had chosen to become my pawn. I replied with a cold directive. Asterisk, drag them all onto the balcony. Asterisk. As she prepared to carry out the task, I suited up in my state-of-the-art extreme weather gear, a marvel of 2050 technology capable of shielding against even Antarctic temperatures. I stepped out onto the frigid balcony just as Zhou Kuer shivered from the biting wind. Her voice trembled. Why, you're not planning to freeze them to death out here, are you? I smiled, but it was a smile without warmth. I won't dirty my hands. This task is yours to complete. With that, I tossed her a length of sturdy rope, instructing her to tie up each of the unconscious men and retrieve Chen Jinghao's gun for me. Zhou Kuer glared, incredulous. Really? After 2 days with no food, you expect me to move grown men by myself? Can't you at least help? I kept my gun pointed steadily at the sleeping figures on the ground, with its aim shifting subtly toward her every so often as I retorted icily. Carelessness gets people killed. I take no chances. Left with no choice, Zhou Kuer forced herself to comply, eventually finding the gun tucked in Chen Jinghao's waistband. Following my instructions, she disarmed it, removing the magazine before throwing the weapon into my waiting hands. It was just as the surveillance footage showed. This gun was Chen Jinghao's all right. Slipping it into my dimensional storage, I turned back into the room and grabbed a high-pressure water hose. Switching it on, I aimed the freezing torrent directly at the adjacent balcony. From her vantage point inside, Zhou Kuer watched in awe, murmuring to herself about the ruthlessness of freezing them slowly but surely with icy water. And with a touch of grim satisfaction, the next phase of my plan began to unfold. Freezing to death, though cruel, is indeed a safe and efficient method. At this moment, Chen Jinghao was jolted awake by the icy rush of water. His face was filled with confusion as he realized that someone had drugged him. He screamed in terror, and the rest of his subordinates also woke up in his screams. It wasn't until then that he turned and noticed me on the opposite side of the balcony. Of course, it's you, Zhangyi. I'm going to tear you apart. I responded coldly. You might want to worry about yourself first. Under the chilling water torture I unleashed, they were soon drenched to the bone. In this freezing temperature, it only took seconds for them all to turn into ice sculptures. Not wanting to waste precious water resources, I stopped spraying. I thought to myself, froze like this, there's no way they can survive. Continuing would just be a waste. I then dialed Zhou Kuer's number. You've passed the test. Prepare to come over. Hearing this, Zhou Kuer finally breathed a sigh of relief. She collapsed to the ground with a thud and responded in a trembling voice. I'll head over right now. I opened the heavily secured 10-ton safety door, then took a few steps back, pointing my gun at the entrance. Through surveillance, I confirmed Zhou Kuer wasn't making any suspicious moves before unlocking the final electronic lock with my phone. You can push the door and come in. Using all the strength she had left, Zhou Kuer managed to push the door open just wide enough to squeeze through. Immediately, a warm current enveloped her. The long-lost warmth felt like heaven to her. With a soft thud, she collapsed onto the floor, savoring the warmth like plunging into a hot spring. Without realizing it, Zhou Kuer removed her outer coat. That's when I suddenly appeared behind her, pressing my gun to her back. Dr. Zhou, it seems you've forgotten where you are. If you want to stay in my home, you must prove that you're no threat to me. Startled, Zhou Kuer finally remembered she wasn't alone. In a soft, fragile voice, she said, What do you want me to do? I spoke plainly. You're not hiding any weapons, are you? Remember, we're on the same boat now, and you better be honest with me. Zhou Kuer was smart. She understood the concept of equivalent exchange in a post-apocalyptic world. You must remember, being allowed to stay here is a privilege I've granted you. It only means you still have value to me. From now on, you are to follow my every order without question. If I detect even the slightest hint of betrayal, I won't hesitate to kill you. Inside, Zhou Kuer thought to herself, This guy is ruthless. But she also knew the stakes and could only nod obediently, too afraid to question anything. Pointing to a bedroom deep inside the unit, I said, "You'll stay in that room. Keep in mind, there are 360-degree surveillance cameras installed in there, no privacy whatsoever. You won't have access to the door, only I can open it. You'll need my permission every time you want to leave. You can raise concerns if you have any, but I won't care or listen. If this all sounds too strict for you, the door is always open, and you can leave now." How could Zhou Kuo even think of leaving? Outside was a living hell, and this place was heaven. She nodded fervently, like a chick pecking at grains. I'll do whatever you say." Her compliance greatly pleased me. Talking to a smart woman was always easier. If it had been Fang Yiqing in her place, I'd probably be dealing with an outrageous tantrum by now. Playing with a strand of Zhou Kuo's hair, I softened my tone as I continued. "You have to understand, you have no choice but to rely on me now. You've seen for yourself what kind of hell awaits outside. You know you have no alternatives. So, I plan to let you in on a secret." Slowly, I told her, "You saw what happened to those trying to break into my safe house. They've all been taken care of. As for the cause of this blizzard, you've probably already learned from the news. The gamma ray burst stemming from a supernova explosion. That same radiation caused some genetic mutations in people. Because of it, I've developed a special ability. I now possess an independent spatial dimension." As I spoke, I casually pulled a loaf of bread out of thin air. Zhou Kuo's face was filled with disbelief. Tossing her the bread, I continued, "The reason I can live as comfortably as I do right now is because my spatial dimension is filled with an abundance of resources. As long as I'm alive, these resources are accessible to you too. But if I die, everything will disappear with me. This house will quickly turn into a frozen wasteland like the one outside. Eventually, you'll starve to death all the same." Although I knew that Zhou Kuo was inherently kind-hearted, I wasn't the naive, innocent person I used to be. Zhou Kuo stared at me, stunned, as I conjured items from thin air. The bread came out, and before there was even time to be surprised, hot tears spilled down her face as she began devouring it ravenously. Zhou Kuo looked at the burger in her hand and immediately started taking big bites. The fast food she used to disdain now tasted so good that it brought her to the verge of tears. When she finished, I casually tossed her a set of thermal clothing. "Are you full now? If you're full, it's time to get to work." She hurriedly pulled it on, curiosity flashing on her face. "What are we doing?" I motioned for her to follow me to the balcony. Pointing to the frozen figures next door, I said, "Smash them to pieces for me. I want everyone in this building to know that I, Zhang Yi, am not to be trifled with." Zhou Kuo's face was full of disbelief. From the beginning, dealing with Chun Jinghao had been her job alone. Now that they were frozen solid, I still wanted her, a girl, to do something like this? Cowardly wasn't even the word for this. Zhou Kuo muttered protests under her breath. I sneered. Leaving them to freeze to death is letting them off too easy. Besides, the neighbors in this building all think I'm some coward hiding in my apartment. I have to prove otherwise. It's important to let everyone know. Zhang Yi holds grudges and will retaliate. Maybe then they'll stop eyeing my supplies. So, for our strong alliance, it's time for you to step up. This isn't cowardice, it's strategy. With no choice, Zhou Kuo took the baseball bat I handed her, stepped onto the balcony, and without hesitation began swinging at the frozen figures with all her might. Being a top medical student, she didn't seem too fazed by the sight of bodies, especially ones so frozen they shattered along with the ice, breaking into countless fragments as she smashed them apart. "This ice is seriously tough," Zhou Kuo exclaimed, before asking why I was recording the whole thing. "I want the entire building to know I'm not someone to mess with," I replied. Zhou Kuo rolled her eyes, thinking to herself, "From the video perspective, the real tough one here is clearly me." Soon, I uploaded the video to the building's group chat. The neighbors flooded the chat with cheers. Chun Jinghao and his crew had committed countless crimes, and many in the building had lost loved ones because of them. Right after, I sent a voice message to the group. "Chun Jinghao is dealt with. From now on, this building is under my control." As soon as my message was sent, the neighbors, seeing me finally make an appearance, began begging in the chat with desperation. "Zhang Yi, please spare some food. I'll do anything you ask." Meanwhile, Zhou Kuo nestled against me comfortably, like a contented kitten, as we scrolled through the chat messages together. Suddenly, my phone rang, making my chest tighten in surprise. How was she still alive? Sensing something off, Zhou Ku'er instinctively clung tighter to my arm. On the other end of the line, Fang Yiqing's trembling voice was crying. Now that Qin Jinghao is gone, can I come stay with you? Didn't you promise to marry me? Also, I forbid you from being with anyone else. You belong to me and only me. Hearing that, I replied coldly, Why aren't you dead yet? Fang Yiqing, seemingly grasping for straws, suddenly found her answer. Zhang Yi must have thought I was dead, and that's why he's with Zhou Ku'er, that seductress. He must still love me. Now that he knows I'm alive, surely he'll chase her off. Tears of joy brimmed in her eyes. I'm still alive. Come and get me. I'm the one who truly loves you. Beside me, Zhou Ku'er's grip on my arm tightened even more. The sense of danger she felt loomed larger. At that moment, she resolved to prove her worth and stay firmly in my good graces. But I had a worse plan brewing. Casually, I sent Fang Yiqing a photo of Zhou Ku'er and me looking intimate. Seeing the photo, Fang Yiqing's last glimmer of hope was thoroughly crushed. She grabbed her phone and stared at my accompanying message with dead eyes. You're a good girl, but I've found someone more suitable for me. I trust you'll wish us well, right? The sight of me and Zhou Ku'er together sparked flames of jealousy within Fang Yiqing. She knew then that she had lost, utterly and completely. In despair, she screamed into the phone. She's not sincerely in love with you. Give me one more chance, Zhang Yi. I'll prove that we're meant to be together. I responded indifferently. Ku'er and I are in true love. What could you possibly have that compares to her? Now leave. But Fang Yiqing refused to accept it. This man had once pursued her like a stray dog for 3 years. Now, she was the one chasing after him. And yet he had moved on so easily? At that moment, all her rage fixated on one target. Zhou Ku'er. That witch. How dare she steal my man? Next to her, Fang Yiqing's best friend, Lin Kaining, sneered sarcastically. You really brought this on yourself, didn't you? Meanwhile, I smirked to myself, thinking the stage had been perfectly set. 冉诚恳的性格是不会做出对不起谢丽梅女儿的事情的。他话语间，父亲般的责任感暴露无遗。但换个角度来看，这也意味着他愿意为了谢丽梅母女做出任何牺牲，包括将自己的资源毫无保留地倾囊而出。放下电话后，我轻声叹了口气。末世的残酷在于，它不仅考验我们的生存能力，更考验我们的决策与信任。人心复杂，利益交织，每一件事都可能潜藏危机与不可预见的后果。哥哥，尤大叔打来电话，是需要帮助吗？周可儿柔声问道，目光中带着些许忧虑。他那边情况不太好。我点了点头，只是有时候帮助别人也得看值不值得。这种末世里，情分是最廉价也最危险的东西。周可儿略微一愣，又点了点头，似乎在努力学着我的逻辑。哥哥说的对，优先考虑自己无可厚非，毕竟活下去才是最重要的。我看着他逐渐学会保护自己理性思考的模样，心中不禁升起几分满足感。他的成长才是我过去一段时间最大的成就。这不是冷漠，而是在末世的环境中最基本的生存要素。雪灾没有丝毫缓和的迹象，反而愈发凛冽。我透过窗子看向外面，世界仿佛陷入一片白茫茫的死寂，让人窒息般的寂静中，唯有生存的本能支撑着每个人活下去。收起思绪，我拿起周可儿为我递上的饭菜，轻轻拨开已经放凉的一道热汤。虽然条件艰难，但每一顿饭依然是支撑人继续走下去的动力。只要我们还能吃上一口热饭，还能彼此护着活着，那就还有希望。活着就是希望最脆弱且最强韧的证明。Based on my conditions, if it weren't for this snow disaster, I wouldn't have found a partner. I told Uncle Yu that I only had a few boxes of medicine left, but he was welcome to come and take one. Hearing this, Uncle Yu was overwhelmed and speechless with emotion. The fact that I was willing to share one of my last few boxes truly moved him with gratitude. In reality, my personal space has a stockpile of medication, but by saying this, I knew Uncle Yu would be wholeheartedly loyal to me. Sure enough, after calming down, Uncle Yu firmly pledged, "I, Yu Hongguang, swear today, as long as you, Zhang Yi, need me for anything, even if it's the most dangerous task, I will have no hesitation." Beside me, Zhou Ku'er observed my handling of the situation and couldn't help but marvel at how deep my calculations ran beneath my cold exterior. She handed me a glass of red wine and curiously asked, "Uncle Yu, do you think he's truly reliable?" I downed the drink in one gulp and replied evenly, "In this world, people's actions are always driven by their interests. This is even more apparent in the apocalypse. Helping kind-hearted people and trading a favor can only bring benefits without harm." After a moment, there was a knock at the door, followed by Uncle Yu's voice. From the surveillance screen, I saw a woman holding a child. It must be Xieli Mei. Why did she come along too? I took out some medicine and handed it through the shooting slot, urging them to hurry back and treat the child. A fever in such a young child must not be delayed. Uncle Yu picked up the medicine, his face full of gratitude. Then Xieli Mei moved closer, pleading tearfully, "Brother Zhangyi, can I beg you for a favor? The baby is so sick, I'm afraid he won't make it." She continued with desperation in her voice. "Could we stay here for a while? Your house has a fireplace, and there's enough room." Uncle Yu froze in place, clearly finding the situation awkward. He hadn't mentioned this request before arriving. I thought to myself, this woman is truly cunning, using the child to gain sympathy and trying to secure herself a comfortable situation. No way was I going to let her have her way. "Sister Xia, I'm really sorry," I said flatly, "but the fireplace is almost out of fuel. Coming inside won't help much." Uncle Yu chimed in, "Brother Zhang Yi has already done so much for us. Let's not push our luck." But Xieli Mei's tears only thickened as she cried out bitterly to Uncle Yu, "The baby is so weak. He's not your biological child. Of course, you don't care as much." Turning once again to the door, she sobbed and begged, "My baby is so pitiful right now. I'm asking you because I know you have a good heart. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the face to ask. I promise, if we come inside, we'll follow your every instruction." Leaning casually against the doorframe, I responded in an unhurried tone. Such a simple request. Before the apocalypse, I would have said yes without hesitation. But you know as well as I do, just a few days ago, the entire building's neighbors came to attack my home, leaving me with lasting psychological scars. Now, I can't bring myself to trust strangers. I hope you understand. Uncle Yu, seemingly moved by my words, firmly told Xieli Mei, "Brother Zhang, he has been more than generous already. This box of fever medicine is worth millions in today's terms. We should be thankful." But Xieli Mei, looking pitiful and defiant, countered, "He was willing to let Dr. Zhou stay inside. Why not us?" Hearing this, I scoffed lightly. "Zhou Ku'er is my girlfriend. Of course, she stays with me." Zhou Ku'er, quietly standing beside me, felt her heart stir slightly at those words. She understood I was likely just making an excuse, but hearing me publicly declare her as my girlfriend still sent a sweet ripple through her thoughts. Meanwhile, an uneasy Uncle Yu was caught in the middle, frustrated. It was clear that Xieli Mei hadn't discussed any of her plans with him beforehand. Sensing my growing impatience, Uncle Yu grabbed her arm and warned in a sharper tone, "Stop crossing the line. Don't put people in a tough spot." Realizing Uncle Yu was genuinely upset now, Xieli Mei quickly changed her approach, assuming a look of pitiful grievance as she glanced at the child in her arms. "Do you think I want to be like this?" she murmured softly. "I'm just worried about the baby." As I watched their backs fading into the distance, I sighed inwardly. Xieli Mei, without a doubt, is a formidable player. If I want Uncle Yu entirely under my influence, I'll have to deal with her first. Later, back in their room, Uncle Yu began questioning Xieli Mei sharply, demanding to know why she acted without consulting him. "You need to realize something. The only reason I stocked up on instant noodles and survived to this point is because of Zhang Yi's guidance. It's only right to repay kindness." But Xieli Mei, now speaking more softly, leaned closely against Uncle Yu's shoulder. "Honestly, there's no need to be that grateful to him," she said in a coaxing way. "I don't think he fully trusts you. If he truly trusted you, wouldn't he have at least let us inside briefly, for something as small as a cup of hot tea?" Her words stirred irritation in Uncle Yu, who clenched his fists tightly and exclaimed, "That's enough. How dare you? The family gave you such a precious medicine out of kindness, and yet you belittle it as worthless?" Xiaomei still wouldn't give up. Maybe he's just using small favors to bribe you, so he can have you risk your life for him in the end. Don't forget, he killed so many neighbors that day, and his methods were brutal. He's nothing like a good person. And besides, his place clearly has more than enough space for people to stay. Uncle Yu stood up in anger. "That's enough. Do you think I'm some fool? I know who's good and who's bad. I don't need you to teach me." Xiaomei noticed that Uncle Yu was genuinely angry. Knowing the timing was just about right, she switched tactics, softening her tone, and began to cry. "I must have overthought this. I only meant well for you. In times like these, isn't a bit of vigilance better than none?" Fuming, Uncle Yu stormed out of the room. But Xiaomei wasn't about to give up. That warm 82-degree safe house was something she could only dream of having. She secretly made up her mind. No matter the cost, she would find a way to move into that safe haven. Later that night, a sudden loud explosion echoed through the neighborhood. I immediately checked the surveillance cameras and saw construction workers from the neighboring unit. It was astonishing. How did they get here? And worse, they had explosives in their hands. Moments earlier, the snow-covered first floor had been blasted open, leaving a large gaping hole. From within the snow tunnel emerged several burly men wielding shovels, sledgehammers, and other tools. Snow had already piled up to the 5th floor, and no one would have guessed these men would dig their way in like this. Brother Middlepart was just about to step out for snow water when he spotted the group approaching with clear malicious intentions. Realizing the danger, he turned to run, but he didn't make it far. One of them caught up and struck him down with a shovel, leaving him in a pool of blood. "Take him with us when we head back. He'll be good as backup rations," one of them coldly remarked. Clearly, this group had a much larger goal in mind. Within 2 minutes, they'd made their way up to the 24th floor. Turns out, I was their target. Looking frightening and armed to the teeth, they came to my door. At the leader's signal, a man wearing a gray hat stepped forward. Gray Hat crouched beside my door, pulling a roll of detonator cord out of his backpack. Lighting the fuse, he turned and bolted toward the end of the hallway. Seconds later, a deafening explosion shook the entire complex. I woke up instantly, grabbing my handgun and quickly checking my home's defense system. Thankfully, everything was intact, allowing me a moment of relief. Through the cameras, I got a clear view. These men were all unfamiliar faces. Judging from their shovels, rebar, and axes, they had to be the construction workers from Building 26. Muscular and imposing, they were certainly not to be underestimated. As the dust settled, the group hurried back toward my doorway to inspect the results of the blast. Clearly prepared for tonight's attack, their confidence quickly turned to shock. My door, aside from a light covering of soot, was completely unscathed. What the hell, Laolu? Is this a joke? That blast's power was pathetic. Gray Hat was in disbelief. This was top-grade detonator cord that could blow through granite. Could the moisture have ruined it? Even if it didn't breach his alloy door, at least the tiled floor should have been damaged. Watching their failed efforts from behind my monitors, I felt a wave of fury building within me. It was obvious. Someone had leaked intel about my place to the neighbors in the adjoining building. If this group had come to take my life, they shouldn't expect any mercy in return. I lit a Molotov cocktail and hurled it out through the shooting hole. But just one wouldn't suffice to quench my anger. Next, I retrieved a few small white bottles from my dimensional storage, containing white phosphorus dissolved in sulfur dioxide, essentially makeshift white phosphorus bombs. When ignited, white phosphorus burns at temperatures exceeding 1000 degrees Celsius (1832 degrees Fahrenheit) almost instantly. Combined with the explosion from the Molotov cocktail, the entire hallway was engulfed in a raging inferno. Out of the dozen or so attackers, only 5 or 6 managed to flee for their lives. This incident, however, was a wake-up call for me. I realized that if these construction workers had been more skilled in demolition, my safe house might not have withstood their attack. There was even a chance they could bring down the entire building. In such a post-apocalyptic world, for people to form groups to stay alive, they must be extraordinarily cunning and resourceful. I had no doubts they would regroup, armed with more explosives, and come back for a second ambush. Yesterday, My neighbors had criticized me as selfish. But today, they dressed me up as their hero, simply because the men from Building 26 came, armed with explosives, and killed Brother Middle Part with no regard for reason. Just hours ago, the neighbors from Building 26 broke through the snow-covered pathways and tunneled their way up to my unit on the 24th floor. They brought homemade explosives, assuming they could blast their way through my doors. Luckily for me, their formula was amateur work. The explosion was underwhelming, leaving my safe house perfectly intact. From my defensive post, I tossed out a white phosphorus grenade, engulfing the corridor in flames, and followed up by loading up my rifle and unleashing an all-out counterattack. Out of their entire group of over a dozen men, only a handful managed to escape. And just as I thought to myself, we need to find a way to get bigger, more powerful weapons. I never thought the neighbors would resort to explosives. If a professional with enough dynamite showed up one day, this whole building could end up leveled to the ground. But right now, the most urgent thing is to deal with those construction workers. I headed over to Jo Kuer's room. At that moment, she was curled up in the corner, quietly crying, clearly terrified by the earlier explosion. Seeing her so fragile and vulnerable, a strong sense of protectiveness washed over me. I gently reassured her, "I'm here. Don't be afraid." Kuer, snapping back to reality, grabbed my hand and asked what had just happened. We sat on the bed and talked for a long time as I explained everything to her. It was the construction workers from Unit 26. There's a nearby work site, and a lot of the workers have been renting rooms in our complex, I told her. Kuer didn't quite understand. But our complex is pretty high-end. Why would they rent here? I explained. If you cram 100 people into a single apartment, it's not so pricey. Kuer's expression grew serious. If that's the case, they're even more dangerous than Chen Zhenghao. I nodded in agreement. Chen Zhenghao is nothing more than a petty thug with a few tricks up his sleeve. If it weren't for his gun, he would have been long gone. These construction workers, though, are a completely different story. They're used to physical labor, strong, enduring, and far tougher than the average person. On top of that, they know each other well. Their group is bound to be more united than anyone else's. At that thought, I took a deep breath. Luckily, I had already taken care of the guy who knew how to handle explosives. Otherwise, who knows if he'd come back with something even more devastating. Kuter suddenly leaned toward me and asked, "So, are you going to take revenge on them?" Zhang Yi, always settle scores, but I'm not about to take them on alone. Sure, I have enough weapons to deal with them, but if I get hit with a shovel in the process, that'd be a horrible trade. Kuter rolled her eyes. You're so cautious and calculating, honestly. It was clear by now, if I wanted to deal with this situation, I needed to gather some backup, even if it was just to serve as cannon fodder. I pulled up our neighborhood messaging group chat. The explosion earlier had woken everyone up, and the group was already in total chaos. Some were saying it was an earthquake, others guessed a meteor had fallen. I casually typed, "Those guys from Unit 26 tried to blow up my door. I took most of them out." I added, "Zhang Ming from the 10th floor has already been killed. They dug a tunnel through the snow to sneak in." Hearing this, fear spread quickly among the neighbors. Those workers across the way weren't just any random criminals. They were desperate, dangerous men. And nearly all the able-bodied young men in our tower had already been killed. The rest were elderly folks, women, and children. No match for them at all. But at least we have Zhang Yi. With you here, our building is safe. You're a true hero. I didn't hesitate to throw some cold water on their excitement. My weapons are running low, and even defending myself is becoming difficult. You'd all better figure something out for yourselves. Right then, Uncle Yu called me. "Zhang Yi, are you okay?" "I know Huang Tianfeng, the foreman from Unit 26. We've crossed paths before. He's got several dozen men working under him, and they've already caused a lot of harm around here. Now they're targeting you. If you need help, I could step in and teach them a lesson." Hearing this, a plan began to form in my mind. Since Uncle Yu knows their situation, I could have him provide intel on their setup. I already had an idea for how to deal with them. If they're bold enough to try and blow up my door, that's perfect. I'll happily invite them over for a barbecue. Maybe throw in some beer and snacks, too. It turns out, all these troublemakers were from Unit 26. After I repelled their attack, my neighbors started treating me like the hero of Unit 25. They knew full well that if anyone could stand against Unit 26, it was only me. I told Uncle Yu right away. To take on this gang of lunatics from Unit 26, we needed to unite everyone in our building. After all, my strongest advantage was this virtually indestructible steel fort of mine. For my own safety, I wasn't going to step foot outside. Uncle Yu wanted to rally the neighbors in the group chat immediately, but I shut down that idea. There's no need to recruit anyone outright. That'll make them suspicious of our intentions. Let them come to us instead when they're desperate. With our supplies, it's only a matter of time before they realize they'll need us, especially after the Tianhe gang retaliates. I had Kuer and Uncle Yu work together to gather intel on the entire complex. I needed to know who, among these 30 buildings, might pose any sort of threat to me. With his connections as a former security guard and her role as a doctor, they both had some decent networks to tap into. Sure enough, the doc's efficiency was unmatched. In less than half a day, she returned with, gathered a large amount of intelligence. Zhou Kuer changed into her work attire and introduced things to me in a highly professional tone. The most troublesome threat right now is the Tianhe gang in Building 26. They were formed around the engineering team of Tianhe Group, with strong combat capabilities and an unusually tight-knit bond. Last time they attacked your home, you counter-killed 8 of them. Several others, wounded from burns, froze to death. Now they're down to just a little over 20 people. Another threat is from Building 21, led by a guy they call Dino, heading a gang called the Mantis Gang. At least their name isn't as silly as it could be. From what I can tell, they're mostly young guys, physically fit, and their combat power shouldn't be underestimated either. There are about a dozen of them. Their leaders are someone named Wang Chong and another named Xiao Lu. As for the survivors in the other buildings, there aren't many left. They don't pose much of a threat. It only took 2 days before the Tianhe gang made their move. Their foreman, Huang Tianfang, put out word publicly. They were going to wipe clean Building 25 and personally kill me, Zhang Yi, to avenge their brothers. Though they hate me to their core, they also fear me just as much. Knowing my home is too fortified to breach, they decided to target my unit's unsuspecting neighbors instead. They even openly taunted me. If you have the guts, come out. Otherwise, I'll slaughter your adorable neighbors one by one. Let's see how you live with the guilt. Hearing that, I couldn't help but laugh. Do they really think I'm like one of those bleeding heart protagonists you see in movies? They have no idea their little plan works perfectly in my favor. I want them to kill off some of the neighbors, forcing everyone's hand until they come begging me for help. Sure enough, it only took 2 days before the neighbors couldn't take it anymore. Yesterday, they saw me as a hero. Today, they were lashing out at me like a pack of rabid dogs in the group chat. They claimed this was all my fault, that I brought this mess to them. Why should innocent neighbors have to pay for my actions? I responded coldly in the chat. They attacked me, and I defended myself. The fact that you can't protect yourselves has nothing to do with me. If they're as dangerous as you say, doesn't that make it even clearer I shouldn't step out and take them head-on? The neighbors shifted to moral blackmail. This is all because of you. Why should we pay the price for your vendettas? Seeing your neighbors die tragically, doesn't your conscience hurt? Meanwhile, you're tucked away safe and sound in your home. I sneered in response, spitting out harsh words. Whether you live or die has nothing to do with me. Don't talk to me about a so-called conscience. Where was yours when they were attacking my home and all of you just stood by watching the show? Finally, I upped the ante. And don't tell me you really think I won't lay a hand on you if you cross me. The group chat fell silent as everyone finally realized I'm not someone to mess with. After all, they'd already heard about how I took down Qin Jinghao with no hesitation. Across from me, the rich kid Su Hao stared hopelessly out the window. He had foolishly thought he'd be safe once Qin Jinghao was out of the picture. Instead, the Tianhe gang ended up being even more ruthless than Qin Jinghao ever was. Seeing the unyielding snowfall outside, he despaired. Is this really how I die, so pointlessly, in this hellhole? Once I decided the timing was just right, I made a call to Uncle Yu. It's time for you to step in. The once cold and ascetic beauty of a doctor in our midst had now become my devoted confidant. Not only did she play various roles to keep me entertained, but she also proactively helped me gather intelligence about the outside world, mapping out every nearby risk. A true high achiever, she'd compiled her findings and merged them with the intel collected by Uncle Yu. She reported everything to me clearly and methodically, reaffirming that the only 2 threats left in the neighborhood were the Tianhe gang and the Mantis gang. Well done, I praised. Keep gathering intelligence. What matters most is confirming whether anyone has firearms. I don't fancy the idea of someone pointing a gun at me. After reaching an agreement with Uncle Yu, I purposely lashed out at the neighbors in the group chat. I cussed them all out so thoroughly none dared to speak back, completely at a loss about what to do next. Guilt-tripping me didn't work out the way they hoped, and now they knew the Tianhe gang would soon begin their bloody door-to-door slaughter. Right as the neighbors were spiraling into despair, Uncle Yu suddenly spoke up in the chat. Don't be afraid, everyone. The Tianhe gang only has 20-something people left. But we, here in Building 25, still have 50 or more. If we can join forces and work together, there's no reason for us to fear them. In an instant, he rekindled a glimmer of hope among the neighbors. After all, Uncle Yu's always been the no-nonsense, reliable, retired soldier type. But, Uncle Yu added, my supplies are running out too. And truth be told, our only shot is to convince Zhang Yi to take the lead. Only he has the strength and strategic mind to stand against the Tianhe gang. Without him, it's game over for us. The neighbors all fell silent, their hope faltering. After all, they just thoroughly ticked me off. I'd openly told them I wouldn't lift a finger to help. Now, the fact that I hadn't left the group chat, that's already being polite. Uncle Yu chimed in. I can still talk to him. I'll give it my best shot, see if I can make him change his mind. At that moment, all the neighbors pinned their last hope on Uncle Yu. Uncle Yu immediately messaged me privately. What should I do next? I told him, the timing is right. We'll play good cop, bad cop, using both pressure and incentives to make these neighbors obediently follow my lead. To be honest, in my mind, I was thinking, even if this crowd can't stop the Tianhe gang, they can at least serve as willing cannon fodder. I then sent a voice message to the group chat. Out of respect for Uncle Yu, let's talk this out. After all, we're all neighbors here. At that moment, the neighbors grabbed onto this chance like it was their lifeline. Out came a flood of flattery, like it didn't cost a thing. I never realized Zhang Yi had such a big heart. Another chimed in. As long as you're willing to help, we'll do whatever you say. I chuckled coldly and responded in a low voice. Oh? Then if I ask you all to grab weapons and fight the Tianhe gang head-on right now, would you dare? The chat went completely silent. Seeing this, I continued. So, you expect me to fight at the front while you watch the show from the back? If that's the case, just go wash your necks and wait for them to bring the blade. Goodbye. Right then and there, Uncle Yu began his act. No. Brother Zhang Yi, we'll follow your lead for sure. Either way, we're dead anyway. If we fight, there might still be a chance at survival. Simultaneously, he yelled angrily at the neighbors. What are you all waiting for? Wait until Huang Tianfang has a blade to your neck, and it's too late. With this back and forth, the neighbors finally agreed to follow my orders, and I naturally secured control over the entire building. I calmly declared in the chat, from now on, everyone in this building must follow my instructions. Don't even think about slacking off or reaping benefits by hiding at home. Anyone who tries to slack will be dealt with first. At the same time, I reassured the neighbors. As long as you behave, I'll make sure you won't starve. I'm planning to head out to find supplies for everyone. Right after I said this, the chat exploded. I never imagined that after how we treated you, you're still willing to forgive us. It's so dangerous out there in this freezing weather. Some neighbors even started sobbing in shame. I knew then that my words and actions had completely locked this group of neighbors under my control. I thought to myself, going out to find supplies is a win-win. First, it ties the neighbors' survival to me completely. From now on, they wouldn't dare betray me. If I died, no one else could get them food. Second, even though I live on the 24th floor and my place is fortified with alloy reinforcements, if the lower floors collapse, I'd be done for, too. That means I need cannon fodder to stand guard for me and serve as expendable shields if necessary. In order to keep them alive for my purposes, supplies are essential. Weapons are, of course, also a necessity. In my separate storage, I have snow vehicles, Arctic snowmobiles, and high-tech winter gear. Heading out into the snow to find supplies isn't a problem for me at all. Plus, having worked in storage logistics for years, I know exactly where all the warehouses in this city are located. My first stop? The city's police department. After 30 days of lockdown, the first time I stepped out as a grown man wasn't for groceries or supplies, but to raid a supermarket for balloons. Because I knew very well, I couldn't afford any accidental discharge incidents. Then, I headed straight for the Tianhai Police Department. Why? Because it must stockpile plenty of weapons. I know for sure, fear stems from a lack of firepower. And when it comes to firearms, the more, the better. Before I left on this supply run, I caught a glimpse of the worry and guilt in Zhou Kuer's eyes. She always felt like she was a burden to me. After all, having her around meant more resources were consumed, and both our energy expenditures increased significantly. Meanwhile, the neighbors were full of gratitude toward me. They practically worshipped me now. To them, I was their savior, their leader. Even Zhou Kuer joked, "If you started your own religion now, you'd be its founding prophet. Everyone sees you as their spiritual pillar. You know, religion always thrives in times of crisis." Hearing her, I gave a faint smile. They're just cannon fodder, nothing more. Why bother with all the theatrics? Today, a piece of spoiled bread could make them treat me like a god. But tomorrow, they might stab me in the back over a single steamed bun. I then after putting on my 18 layers of bulletproof vests, "Well, this is a good chance for me to personally check out the world outside," I muttered. She knew I didn't fully trust her, so she insisted on coming with me. Jokingly, I pinched her cheek and said, "With the kind of bond we share now, just stay here and wait for me, all right?" Before I even left, I stashed every single supply in the room into my alternate storage space. Zhou Kuer gave me an unimpressed look, muttering under her breath, "Figures, men are all the same." Currently, everything below the 4th floor had been completely submerged under layers of snow. I made my way to the 5th floor, smashed open a window, and jumped out. The soft snow instantly swallowed me up past my knees. Walking normally through this thick layer of snow was out of the question. I quickly scanned my surroundings to ensure no one was watching. Then, I retrieved a snowmobile from my alternate dimension. The deafening roar of its engine echoed through the ghostly quiet apartment complex. I knew too well that this sound would attract countless prying eyes filled with greed. But I didn't care. The wind from my high-speed ride at 70 miles per hour felt liberating. As I reached the Tianhai City Police Department headquarters, I returned the snowmobile to my storage and broke in through a window. The station was shrouded in darkness, the kind of silence that chilled your bones even more than the freezing weather. I pulled out a high-powered flashlight and began searching each floor meticulously. Descending to the 2nd floor, I pushed open a door, and the scene before me hit me like a brick. 5 or 6 police officers huddled together, frozen to death. Judging by their uniforms, they must have been on duty the night the disaster struck. With no time to grab winter clothing or any warm gear, they succumbed to the cold. Quietly, I draped a piece of fabric I found over their bodies, offering a moment of silence for these unsung heroes who once protected this city. They were the true champions, deserving of respect even in death. At that moment, my gaze landed on a keychain on the ground. When I picked it up, a wave of excitement washed over me. Anything deemed worthy of their final stand had to be among the police department's most valuable assets, the armory. Breaking into the armory wasn't a walk in the park. It took me over 2.5 hours combing through the building. But when I finally unlocked that door, standing there was like Christmas morning. Rows of weaponry, bulletproof vests, helmets, batons, everything you'd ever need. And there it was, a heavy-duty sniper rifle sitting gloriously among the hall. This would be perfect for stealthy takedowns in the future. After my rebirth, my mental acuity seemed to have heightened. When I dealt with that gang from the Tianhe crew days ago using a handgun, every shot was unnervingly precise. Is this some newfound ability I hadn't realized before? Was I secretly a sharpshooting prodigy? Armed with all this new gear, I'd gathered enough to assemble a decently powerful team. No hesitation, I packed every last item into my alternate space. This discovery only deepened my instincts. Outside there must still be troves of untapped supplies. The apocalyptic snowstorm hit suddenly in the middle of the night, catching everyone off guard. By the time people fully realized the severity, it was already too late. The next priority? Food, for the so-called cannon fodder I planned to recruit. With vivid memories leading me to a commercial development area near the outskirts of town, I retrieved tools from storage and pried a door open to a mall. Gone were the days of dazzling displays. It looked like an abandoned tomb. Jewelry and designer brands that once screamed luxury now resembled meaningless junk gathering frost. I scavenged whatever useful items I could find, then headed down to the basement food section. Being located far from the city center, this shopping hub was still stocked, packed shelves just as they'd been left. Of course, everything had been frozen solid for nearly a month. While they hadn't rotted, their quality was less than ideal. Freeze-dried meat, rock-hard blocks of fish. Yeah, not exactly appetizing. Even if someone handed me these for free, I'd think twice before eating them. But for some of my starving neighbors back at the complex, this was probably the equivalent of dining like kings. Before long, I had packed 2 enormous bags full of supplies. Clock was ticking. I needed to head back before nightfall. The snowmobile's raucous engine shattered the stillness of the desolate streets. Turning from Changhua Avenue, crossing Urxiankyo Bridge, I returned swiftly to my apartment complex in Yulu. The moment the engine revved down, I noticed countless eyes from neighboring survivors glued to me, jealous and calculating. Among them was Huang Tianfeng, the leader of the remnants of the Tianhe gang. He stared at my snowmobile with a fiery greed. A rare gem like this in the south? If he could snag it, we'll finally be able to go out and scavenge for supplies ourselves. No more eating this sour, spoiled meat. He immediately barked at his subordinates. No matter what it takes, I must have that guy brought to me. I know very well that everyone in the entire complex has their eyes set on that vehicle. Luckily, I've already gathered a ton of weapons and gear. At this moment, Uncle Yu had been waiting by the window for quite some time. When he caught sight of the 2 massive bags filled to the brim with supplies, his eyes were full of astonishment and admiration. Right then, the Tianhe gang decided to make their move again. After all, if I managed to make it back to my place, they'd lose their chance entirely. The city's been snowed in for 30 days. All the neighbors can do is sit at home in despair, waiting for death. But not me. I've been tearing through the streets on my beloved little moped. To make sure my neighbors are utterly loyal to me, serving as cannon fodder without hesitation, I raided the police armory and even found a supermarket, dragging back 2 gigantic sacks of pig feed. I immediately called the neighbors to come grab some food. Before long, the hallway was packed with people. But before handing out the supplies, of course, I needed to do a bit of mental conditioning for my future pawns. I risked my life, pushed myself to my absolute limits, and nearly turned all of Tianhe City upside down just to get these supplies. Zhou Kuer played along perfectly, opening up the bags without a word. Instantly, the long-lost sight of food appeared before everyone. Frozen blocks of meat, moldy bread, and even a giant watermelon. Sure, back in the old days, this stuff wouldn't even be good enough for a dog. But now, after 3 days of hunger, my starving neighbor's eyes lit up with excitement. Uncle Yu seized the moment and raised his arm in a cheer. Long live Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi is our hero. The neighbors quickly chimed in, their voices loud and desperate to be heard. Zhang Yi, you're our savior. I thought to myself, at this moment, if I told them to crawl on all 4s like dogs, they'd do it without hesitation. The allure of food was simply too strong. I then shouted my orders to the neighbors. I'll make sure there's enough food for everyone. But let me be clear, I, Zhang Yi, will not feed freeloaders. If you eat my food, then you'll pick up a weapon and fight against our enemies. Just as I was about to start assigning tasks, a group of Tianhe gang thugs barged in, brandishing their weapons and full of arrogance. Hand over the food, one of them yelled, and we might just spare your lives. I waved my hand dismissively. Anyone who takes them down will get food rewards for 5 people. As soon as the words left my mouth, the crowd's eyes went bloodshot. These thugs, who were all burly construction workers, thought they'd intimidate everyone into submission. They couldn't have been more wrong. My neighbors, fueled by raw desperation, lunged at them like a pack of rabid animals. Chaos erupted in an instant. For the sake of a few scraps of food, everyone fought like their lives depended on it. In the bone-chilling cold of -70 degrees Fahrenheit, even injuries didn't register. The Tianhe gang members may have been brutal and fearless, but they couldn't withstand the sheer number of attackers. Realizing the battle was turning in our favor, Uncle Yu let out a battle cry and charged in, his axe making quick work of one of the thugs. Watching their comrades fall one by one, panic overtook the remaining gang members. They dropped everything and fled without looking back. Cheers erupted all around. We won. We chased off the bandits and kept our food safe. Zhou Kuer glanced at the injured neighbors lying on the ground. She knew that with immediate treatment, they might survive. But that would require medicine, valuable supplies better used elsewhere. All she could do was sigh in frustration. Afterward, I gathered everyone in the lobby. You all did great today, I announced. See, as long as we stick together, the Tianhe gang is nothing but a joke. I waved over two young men who had fought particularly hard during the skirmish. You two did well today. Keep that energy up, and I'll make sure you're well fed and taken care of. With that, I handed them both armfuls of food. They nearly teared up on the spot. Boss, from now on, we're your guys. We'll follow you to hell and back. Gratitude was written all over their faces. The rest of the neighbors stared in envy, kicking themselves for not giving their all in the fight earlier. If they had, that food could have been theirs. Watching this, I couldn't help but smile to myself. It seems my plan was working perfectly. Having raised dogs before, I knew one simple truth. The best way to keep them loyal is to keep them hungry, but not starving. Sure, here's the translated text in line with common American phrasing and tone. See, even cannon fodder follows the same logic. Once a billionaire heir, Su Hao has now been reduced to a man humiliated over a single piece of candy. Why? Because in this frozen apocalypse, even gold bricks are nothing more than table props. When everyone had already received their share of the food, Su Hao stepped out of the crowd and whined, "I didn't get mine." I glanced at him like he was garbage, pulled out a piece of candy from my bag, and tossed it near his feet. "That's your share." Su Hao knelt down to pick it up. You could feel the humiliation crashing over him like a tidal wave. "Are you kidding me? Just this? I wouldn't give this to a beggar." He barked. I smirked. "Don't think I didn't notice. You stood back and didn't lift a finger when others were risking their lives. Trying to reap the rewards without working for it? That piece of candy is the best you're getting from me." My neighbors, some of whom had felt shortchanged with their food rations, suddenly felt a whole lot better seeing Su Hao left with just a candy. Su Hao stammered defensively, "You think I didn't want to help? It's just, everyone else had already piled in, and there was no space for me to get involved." I shrugged, unimpressed. "And that's my problem, Hao? All I know is I saw you standing around doing nothing." Hearing that, Su Hao started losing it. "This isn't fair. You're clearly targeting me." I let out a cold laugh. "Fair? Who do you think you're talking to? You're really here asking me about fairness? What are you going to do about it, huh? Think we're going to sit here and sort this out like civilized people? It's called survival, buddy. Fairness doesn't exist." With a flick of my hand, two young men grabbed Su Hao and pinned him to the ground. "Here's how it works. I make the rules. Either you follow them, or you don't eat. Simple as that." I fired two warning shots close to him. Su Hao immediately cowered, holding his head and sobbing. I turned to the rest of the group and laid it out plain. "If anyone thinks I'm over the top, feel free to drop all your food and walk away right now. Go ahead. Anyone with more principles than will to survive can leave the second they want." The crowd exchanged nervous glances. Nobody moved. After all, the food in their hands was the difference between life and death. Su Hao, still on the ground, managed to croak out with trembling anger, "Zhang Yi, you're going too far." Before he could finish, I slammed my boot down on his hand and yanked his hair up roughly. "Do yourself a favor and learn something today. Zhang Yi is no saint. Never was, never will be. I want this to be crystal clear to all of you. If you want food, you earn it. Freeloaders will get what's coming to them, and I'll make damn sure of it." Before long, everything was distributed, and the tension began to ease, almost. A sugary sweet voice broke through the silence. "Zhang Yi, don't forget about me." I rolled my eyes and saw her, Fang Yiqing. Of course, this two-faced troublemaker just couldn't seem to die off. She looked up at me, all pitiful and desperate, like some little stray begging for scraps. I crouched down and glanced mockingly at her and Lin Caning, who had been standing by her side. "Oh, don't worry, ladies. I didn't forget about you." Their faces lit up for a second, thinking I'd saved something special for them. But the next words out of my mouth crushed any hope they had. "Do you seriously think you're getting anything? I didn't see either of you lifting a damn finger back there." Fang Yiqing was as stunned as if she'd been slapped. All her pride and vanity shattered just like that. She looked up at me like she couldn't believe her ears, while Lin Caning burst out angrily. "What the hell? Everyone else got something. Why are we the only ones left out?" Fang Yiqing then cranked her green tea moves to full blast, sobbing and clinging to my leg while crying. "But Zhang Yi, didn't you once promise me it would always be just me? that you wouldn't marry anyone else. I crouched down once more and slapped her hard across the face, loud enough for everyone to hear. Did I say that? Weird, I don't really remember. See, I've said that to a lot of girls. Guess you took me more seriously than I thought. Oh, and by the way, I have a girlfriend now. Tell me, what do you have to offer that even remotely compares to Kuer? I grabbed Zhou Kuer by the waist on purpose, pulling her to me like a trophy. Fang Yiqing fell apart right then and there. Kuer was everything Fang wasn't. A top-tier graduate, a lead doctor at a prestigious hospital, stunningly gorgeous, smart, accomplished. Fang Yiqing, just a low-level worker who dressed cheap and chased money like a moth to a flame. The contrast between the two of them was almost cruel. Fang Yiqing didn't even try to argue. Deep down, she knew she'd lost. There wasn't a fight to be had. A pathetic gold digger pretending to be a queen. You're not even worth the comparison to a nobody. And Su Hao, tell me, what do people in your circle of rich kids think of her? Su Hao hunched over, quickly responding. Universal charger, public bus, gold digger. At that, the neighbors burst into laughter. So that's the kind of woman she is? I can't believe I once thought she was a goddess. In no time, mockery and insults surrounded Fang Yiqing, suffocating her with their derision. Fang Yiqing let out a piercing scream and bolted out of the hall, as if she'd completely lost her mind. Meanwhile, I reached into my pocket, pulling out a bag of moldy biscuits and handed it to Su Hao. You answered well. Here's your reward. Su Hao's eyes lit up with wild delight. In an instant, he felt regret for his earlier defiance. Brother Zhang, I was wrong before. I promise to listen to you from now on. With that little side issue resolved, the priority now was to handle the fortifications on this building. The Tianhe gang could launch another raid at any moment. At present, aside from the children, there were 47 people in the building. Subtracting myself, Zhou Qi, Uncle Yu, and Xieli Mei, that left 43 people. We split them into 6 groups to rotate keeping watch. Any disturbances would be signaled by banging on the metal staircase to alert everyone immediately. Also, for every enemy killed, the reward is food for 5 people. This rule is permanent. And of course, basic rations will be provided for those on watch duty, but only the leftovers others don't want. I left the task of assigning groups to Uncle Yu and returned to my quarters, diving into research on how to operate various firearms. Even a month into this frozen apocalypse, some corporate servers were still operational. Humanity hadn't yet given up the fight to rebuild civilization, stubbornly preserving the sparks of what remained. Fortunately for me, my background with the Shooting Association meant I wasn't a stranger to handling guns. At this point, Zhou Qi asked me about the situation outside. Currently, snow had piled up to over 10 meters, burying low-rise buildings completely. Even if the snow somehow stopped falling today, it would take months to melt. And with winter's arrival just around the corner, the conditions were only bound to worsen. But truth be told, none of that was the biggest problem. In an apocalypse, the scariest thing will always be human nature. I retrieved the firearms I had collected earlier from my hidden inventory space. Among all the weapons, my favorite was the heavy-duty sniper rifle. Because let's face it, guns are every man's dream. And this one was sheer perfection. I couldn't put it down. I moved to the balcony, testing the scope to scan the distance. I needed an opportunity to try out this assassination masterpiece in action. Just as I was adjusting the scope, 2 shadowy figures suddenly appeared in my field of vision. Eventually, Zhou Qi and I started living a shamelessly indulgent life together. Ever since I unlocked her potential, it was as though she had awakened, eager to please at every turn, as if one unsatisfied glance from me would mean a catastrophe. But today, after stockpiling all sorts of weaponry, I had no time for her attention-seeking antics. I grabbed the sniper rifle and fiddled with it on the balcony. Suddenly, 2 figures appeared through the sight. Looked like they were trying to steal my snowmobile. Earlier today, I deliberately pretended to park the snowmobile in the garage. Sure enough, someone took the bait. What they didn't know was that the snowmobile had long been stowed away in my inventory dimension. They were bound to come up empty-handed. Uncle, you called me at that moment. I've picked up the instant noodles you gave us, he said. His voice was choked with emotion. This single box of noodles would last them nearly half a month. He went on with a sheepish chuckle. Don't take it to heart if Xieli Mei says something snappy. She's got a bit of a sharp tongue. Come on, Uncle Yu, I'm not that petty. But seriously, Are you really planning on raising someone else's kid alongside her? Uncle Yu confessed that as a 40-year-old bachelor, he was lucky to have a woman willing to stay by his side. I let out a hearty laugh. Don't sell yourself short, Uncle Yu. Look at the world we're in now. Those idle kids who can sing, dance, and rap? Useless. Right now, guys like you, skilled and capable, are the real prime stock. I'm not exaggerating. If a celebrity clung to you now, she'd feel like she hit the jackpot. Switching gears, I added. But to be fair, Xiaolime isn't bad. You two could even have kids of your own in the near future. I knew that hinting just enough would plant a seed in his mind. Indeed, the idea started gnawing at him. I could hear it in his pause. Meanwhile, Zhou Qi, still gluing herself to me, was a different story altogether. Despite having a child herself, her figure remained enviable, her skills unmatched. For someone like Uncle Yu, a lifetime bachelor, how could he possibly resist temptation like this? As we chatted, Zhou Qi inched closer until we locked eyes, understanding one another wordlessly. And yet, our moment was interrupted. Tianhe gang members appeared in the building's first-floor lobby once again, ready for vengeance and supplies. A tense atmosphere brewed as the neighbors on duty quickly slammed the railing, signaling the alarm, while reaching for bricks to defend themselves. Because I had announced a reward of food for 5 people, even the once intimidating Tianhe gang was now seen as no more than prey to the vigilant neighbors. Everyone come out and fight. That's food on the line, someone shouted. The battle lasted only a few minutes. The neighbors, each determined to fight to the bitter end, swiftly overwhelmed Tianhe gang. 3 of their men dropped, and the remaining members, sensing imminent danger, fled in a panic. I watched the entire scene unfold via the surveillance cameras, every detail crystal clear. Moments later, I stepped out onto the balcony, gazing at the fleeing gang members. A thought crossed my mind. If I pulled out my sniper rifle now, could I take them down in one shot each? What kind of joy could a top-tier lone wolf experience when holding a Barrett sniper rifle in hand? I decided to find out. Lifting the weapon one-handed, I aimed through the insane clarity of its 32x scope. Figures even 100 kilometers away seemed as if they were right within arm's reach. Taking a deep breath, I steadied myself, aimed meticulously, and pulled the trigger. The sound of the shot tore through the silent night like a thunderclap. My target dropped immediately. I stared, stunned by my own accuracy. I initially thought it'd just be a warning shot, but it turned out to be a flawless kill. Could it be? I'm a natural-born sniper? Just moments ago, the Tianhe gang had attacked Building 25, only to be driven back in disarray by the neighbors. The commotion stirred me from my slumber, prompting me to step out onto the balcony and look. That was when the idea came to me. I pulled out my police-grade sniper rifle from my alternate dimension, eager to test its capabilities. To my surprise, my casual shot hit dead on. For some reason, the instant I squeezed the trigger, a peculiar rush surged through me. Reloading swiftly, I took aim again. Bang! Another precise hit. This time it became clear it wasn't just luck. It was a gift, a talent, a unique ability. It seemed my awakened powers extended beyond accessing an interdimensional space. Previously, when I fought at close range using pistols and crossbows, I didn't notice this. But with the sniper rifle, my unmatched talent became glaringly evident. I was a born sharpshooter. Realizing this, I quickly reloaded and fired consecutively. 7 shots rang out, 7 targets fell. At that moment, I was ecstatic. With this power, I could stay hidden at home and reign as the ultimate lone wolf sniper. Down below, the neighbors froze in place, utterly shocked by the relentless gunfire. Seeing the bloodied remains of the 7 fallen members of the Tianhe gang, they were gripped with awe and fear. No one expected me, Zhang Yi, to be a sniper with god-tier precision. From this point on, they knew better than to ever cross me. They silently admitted that their mere survival was thanks to Big Brother Zhang Yi. The next morning, I asked Zhou Kuer to cook me some noodles. At this stage, I no longer worried about her pulling any tricks. My daily full-body inspections of her ensured there would be no chance to sneak in poison. As she served me breakfast, Zhou Kuer casually asked, "Were those gunshots last night from you on the balcony?" I replied proudly, almost showing off, 7 shots. 7 Tianhe members down. Hearing this, admiration shone on her face. "Aren't you curious about why I can use a sniper rifle so well?" I teased. But Jo Kurer simply shook her head. It doesn't matter to me. No matter who you are or what you become, I'll stick by your side. I put down my bowl and smirked. Smart. Unlike some people who constantly ask pointless questions that irritate me. But deep inside, I couldn't help wondering. Was Jo Kurer truly so simple, or was she putting on a facade? Meanwhile, over at Building 26, Tianhe Gang leader Huang Tianfang glared at the fallen bodies of his men, burning with rage. Beneath that anger, though, was an overwhelming sense of dread. With only 9 members left, the once mighty Tianhe Gang was no longer capable of inciting chaos. After a prolonged silence, Huang Tianfang finally spoke in a somber tone. Attacking Building 25 for food isn't an option anymore. Tonight, bring back our brothers' bodies. In this frozen wasteland of an apocalypse, luxury cars had been rendered into useless scraps. Yet, for me, it was like collecting junk. I stored them all in my alternate dimension. Since I had more than enough space, I treated it like building up a model collection. After all, a man's love for cars never wanes. But it seemed my recent actions had finally made the Tianhe Gang wake up to reality. With my guns in hand, an impenetrable fortress for a home, and now fiercely loyal neighbors willing to risk their lives, they realized there was no way they could defeat me. Huang Tianfang gave his men a grim order to retrieve their fallen comrades. The meaning behind this order was clear. Everyone knew exactly why he wanted the bodies back. Meanwhile, I made the decision to head out again. This time, I walked openly down the stairs. Neighbors who spotted me regarded me with reverence, as though they were in the presence of a living deity. Pretending to circle around the garage, I pulled out my snowmobile from the alternate dimension. With all eyes on me, I coolly rode out of the neighborhood. At Building 21, Mantis Gang leader Wang Chong was losing his mind trying to figure out where I had hidden the snowmobile. Despite searching the garage all night, they found nothing. Just where could Zhang Yi have stashed it? Regardless, Wang Chong was determined. We must get that snowmobile. Once we have it, the Mantis Gang can quickly expand its reach. His second-in-command, Xiao Lu, nodded fervently in agreement. In these chaotic times, this is our moment, brothers. But first, we need to get some cigarettes. Wang Chong stared at the direction where the motorbike disappeared, his bloodshot eyes filled with tension. I started by checking a few local convenience stores nearby, but it was all the same. The smaller stores, with their low buildings, had been buried under the heavy snow long ago. It seems the only option left is to try my luck at the standalone, large-scale supermarkets. At that moment, I suddenly remembered the warehouse district in the southern part of the city where I used to work. While I'd already emptied Walmart's warehouse before, there were still other companies' supplies stored in the area. 2.5 hours later, I arrived at the warehouse district. Luckily, I could still see the rooftops of some of the buildings, which filled me with joy. This area contained stockpiles from thousands of companies in Tianhe City. If I could clean out this place, not only could I feed everyone back at the building, but I might even be able to support tens of thousands of people. However, when I smashed open the rooftop of the RT Mart warehouse, I found it completely empty. Clearly, the supplies had already been taken. After checking hundreds of factories and warehouse facilities, I finally found one storing vehicles. Inside, there was not only heavy construction equipment, but an impressive collection of luxury cars. I stored everything into my alternate dimension. With so many vehicles now in my possession, my thoughts turned immediately to fuel. The reserves of gasoline and diesel I already had were barely enough for daily power generation. With the regular use of snowmobiles now, my fuel stock just wouldn't cut it. Determined, I got into one of the cars and headed for the largest gas station in the city. But when I arrived, I found myself speechless. The gas station, like many other low-lying buildings, had been completely buried under over 10 meters of snow. At this rate, my fuel wouldn't last much longer. While lying in the snow, consumed by despair and letting the snowflakes pile up on me, a thought suddenly struck me. Didn't I just find several excavators in that warehouse earlier? The snow hadn't been here long enough to compact into solid ice yet. Digging with an excavator might actually work. Without wasting a moment, I retrieved one of the excavators from my alternate dimension. I'd operated cranes and forklifts before, and while my skills with an excavator weren't exceptional, I knew enough to get by. After 2.5 hours of coordinated digging through the thick snow, I finally hit my mark. I'd cleared a nearly 3-meter deep pit and reached the gas station's windows. I returned the excavator to my alternate dimension and broke the windows to enter. My top priority was to locate the underground fuel depot. Following the staircases downwards, I quickly found the access point. I pried open the hatch to reveal 4 massive fuel tanks, 3 filled with gasoline and 1 with diesel. I dismantled and sealed off the fuel lines, then stored all 4 tanks directly into my alternate dimension. At that moment, another idea hit me. If an excavator could uncover the gas station, it could dig out any other snow-buried places as well. Did this mean the entire city's resources were mine for the taking? A wave of excitement rushed over me. For tonight, I'd settle down and rest here. Tomorrow, I'd make my way to that defensive camp uncle you had mentioned. That place must have a stockpile of weapons, maybe even tanks or other heavy-duty vehicles. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, Jokur had been summoned to treat Xia Lighting's sick daughter. The little girl had been running a persistent, high fever, and her mother's anxious worry had turned to helpless desperation. Jokur, however, was equally troubled. Before Zhang Yi left on his mission, he had taken all their emergency medical supplies, leaving only a basic supply of food behind. At that critical moment, Uncle Yu arrived through the door, bringing with him some much-needed fever medication. He gave Xia Lighting a reassuring pat on the shoulder and said in a steady voice, "Don't worry. Brother Zhang Yi is bound to return with more supplies this time. Once he's back, everyone here will be safe." Not far away, another grim showdown was unfolding. Other people might cherish their children like precious gems, but for Lin the madwoman, her grandson was nothing but a source of survival. Lin, driven to madness by desperation, had once again sunk to a new low that shocked everyone else. This time, she'd armed herself with a kitchen knife, attempting a sneak attack on Jokur. Moments before, Jokur had finished treating the neighbor's feverish little girl. Uncle Yu's prompt delivery of those invaluable fever medications had stabilized the child's condition. As Jokur left and was warmly thanked by the girl's teary-eyed mother, the mother looked at her and said, "The medicine, you know, it was from Zhang. The one you owe the most thanks to is Uncle Yu," he said. But just as Jokur turned to head downstairs, a wave of murderous intent suddenly surged toward her back. From behind the door, an unkempt old woman burst out like a feral beast, raising a knife before plunging it directly into the neck of the young mother. The woman cried out in a harrowing scream, "My grandson is dead. If I can't have mine, none of you with kids should be able to keep yours alive." In her final moments, clutching the pain of her fatal wound, the mother mustered all her remaining strength to push her little child toward Jokur. With desperation and pleading in her tear-filled eyes, she begged, "Dr. Zhou, please, save my child." Run! Jokur froze in shock at the horrifying sight before her. Blood painted the walls, and the child's cries pierced her heart. Shaking, she tried reasoning with the deranged figure. "Madam Lin, please calm down. Don't you remember? I treated your grandson before." But Lin, now entirely consumed by madness, screamed back, "My grandson is gone. Why should your children be allowed to live?" Her words echoed in chilling rage as she advanced toward them. Seeing the escalation, Cougar clutched the child tightly, instinctively bolting for the staircase. But who would have imagined that the old woman would be so unervingly agile? In a single leap, she lunged and grabbed Zhou Cougar's ankle with an iron grip, yanking her off balance. Glaring at Zhou with a twisted expression of hatred, Lin hissed, enunciating each word as venomously as she could. "You failed to save my grandson. You have to die." As she raised the knife, prepared to strike both Zhou and the helpless child, fate intervened. Uncle Yu appeared just in time. Without hesitating, he used his body as a shield, absorbing the blow meant to kill her. Then with all his might, he kicked the deranged woman away, sending her sprawling to the ground. In the chaos, Zhou and the child remained unharmed, though visibly shaken and trembling. Uncle Yu let out a shaky sigh of relief. He had made a promise to Zhang Yi, guaranteeing Zhou's safety while he was away, and was grateful that he had managed to keep it. Barely, Lin, lying sprawled on the ground, broke into hideous curses, spewing venom born of an unrelenting grudge. "All of you should die. You, Zhang Yi, and every single person in this building. You all owe your lives. You all deserve to bury yourselves for my grandson." It was common knowledge in the building now. Lin had lost her grip on sanity ever since her grandson was killed. They all knew the horrific details. How? After the boy had been kicked grievously by Chen Jinghao and was teetering on the brink of death, Lin had made a grotesque and unthinkable decision just to survive. She had used the boy. That horrific moment broke her completely. Now, she haunted the halls, a remnant of despair and fleeting humanity. Uncle Yu, trembling with rage, thundered toward her, pointing a finger. You're nothing but a crazed maniac. Who hurt your grandson? It was Chen Jinghao, and it was Zhang Yi who took down that monster and his gang. He avenged your grandson. He saved all of us from meeting the same fate. Without Zhang Yi, none of us in this building would be alive today. And yet you're biting the very hand that tried to save you. Even Zhou Kuer had had enough. Her voice was cold and powerful. And just where, Lady Lin, do you get the audacity to blame Zhang Yi? He sent you medicine, at my request, for your grandson's illness. Lin froze momentarily. This claim seeped into her fractured mind. I begged him to soften his heart, Zhou continued. And that's why he gave me the medicine you desperately needed. I personally delivered it to you. But by then, it was too late. She hesitated, her voice catching, before delivering the final blow. Your grandson, he could have been saved. Lin Xiaohu, there was still hope for him. It was a calculated lie, but one that hit like lightning. The already fragile Lin was shattered from within. Guilt consumed her like a tidal wave, as every corner of her mind screamed at her for robbing her grandson of a possible chance to live. She crumbled, wailing like a broken spirit, lost in the poisonous torment of her own regret. The bystanders in the apartment couldn't hold back their disgust anymore. The building erupted with murmurs. How could anyone harm their own flesh and blood? She's a disgrace to humanity. She's nothing but an old hag, rotting where she once stood. That much greed and vengeance, it eats her alive. She might not last until spring. One bad cold, and all that fat will freeze right up. And if she doesn't go on her own, me and my brother here could help her along. Eh? Cackled one neighbor, sparking a few nervous chuckles. The next morning, after spending a rough night camped in the snowy outskirts, I sat up in my tent. I needed to move. The clock was ticking, and Uncle Yu had spoken of a defense camp rumored to have a massive stockpile of weapons. It was my next destination. I had no choice. In the wasteland we live in, fear is born from one thing: no firepower. Word had gotten out in the neighborhood that I had the only functioning snowmobile left. As a result, every scavenger and survivor had their eyes set on it. Now, it didn't help that my supply of bullets was severely depleted. If too many of them came knocking at once, I wouldn't have enough firepower to hold my ground. Uncle Yu seemed to sense my worry that night. With an air of old military wisdom, he asked me bluntly, "If we had enough weapons, do you think we could hold our apartment and your snowmobile?" I paused, thinking. The fire in my gut reignited when he gave me a faint smirk. I take it that means maybe. Don't forget, I used to be with the military. Not deployed here, but I still have connections to the local defense regions. I know where the old military stockpile is hidden. With Uncle Yu's guidance, I marked the location and set off. The coordinates led me 80 kilometers west to an abandoned barracks. After hours of driving, I arrived. From my dimensional storage, I instantly summoned my excavator. I'd learned a lot about navigating through buried rubble thanks to earlier scavenges, so, with a mix of precision and experience, I was able to locate their dormitory building within just 2.5 hours. I hopped out, entering cautiously. The dormitory was my first stop before I could locate the armory itself. But as soon as I was inside, something felt off. This was a remote military outpost. The snowstorm had hit hard. Logically, they wouldn't have had much time to react. But why? Then, was there no sign of frozen bodies? No remnants of soldiers surprised by the bitter cold? Oddly enough, the dormitory interiors were startlingly well kept. Beds were immaculate, their blankets folded with the impossible precision of army standards. No signs of struggle, nothing out of place. Had they anticipated the disaster? Could they have been forewarned, giving them time to evacuate in such order? Or could something worse have happened here? Some higher-ups must have received intel ahead of time, realizing that the apocalypse was inevitable. So they pulled the military to secure their own safety. These people probably planned to wait out the snowstorm and then use the weapons and supplies in their hands to reclaim dominance over the world. Thinking back to those emptied warehouses, all of this had to be connected in some grand scheme. With that thought, I quickly returned to the excavator. Using the dorm building as a reference point and with the directions provided by the older guy, I soon located the armory. Without hesitation, I operated the excavator and smashed through the wall. What I saw before me could ignite the blood of any man. Racks upon racks were filled with weapons of all kinds: assault rifles, mountains of ammunition, a few military-grade sniper rifles, and several crates of grenades. However, there didn't seem to be any traces of heavy weaponry. It appeared those had indeed been relocated. Still, the stockpile in front of me was more than enough. With these, in all of Tianhai City, no one would dare to pose a threat to me again. I stayed busy transferring what I could until night fell. By the time I returned to the community, it was completely dark. The neighbors, who had been waiting for me to return with food, immediately started questioning me when they saw my empty hands. "Why did it take 2 whole days? And yet you've come back without any food?" I shrugged and replied, "I searched everywhere, but I couldn't find anything edible." Hearing this, the group began murmuring amongst themselves. "There's so much ground out there. Can't you search a little harder?" After all this waiting and nothing to show for it, giving them a cold, piercing look, I spoke sharply. "Are you done talking?" Their expressions froze, and the murmuring ceased immediately. "Are you starting to feel bold? Getting a little too comfortable, aren't you? Let me remind you, don't push your luck. If this keeps up, we'll split ways from here on out, and everyone can fend for themselves." "Got it." I scanned the group with icy indifference. "I've been bringing back food for you multiple times. You really think it's owed to you now? Don't make the mistake of biting the hand that feeds you." The crowd stiffened. A man with a neatly combed middle part quickly stepped forward, trying to smooth things over. "Brother Zhang, everyone's just starving and not thinking straight. We all understand how hard it must be for you to scavenge food for us." Then, with a shift in his tone, he added a small suggestion. "I was thinking, your snowmobile looks like it could carry 3 people, right? Maybe next time you could take a few of us along? You know, more hands make lighter work." I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. "Looks like I forgot. You weren't just eyeing the food. I see you've had your sights on my snowmobile as well." Without another word, I pulled out my pistol and clicked off the safety. When these neighbors are shivering in the cold, struggling to stay alive, I'm comfortably lounging in a secure space kept at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. But each day, I venture out to find food for these disposable cannon fodder. Day after day, they're growing entitled, believing it's their right. A couple of days ago, after I distributed some food, a few of them even started asking for clothes. Typical. Feed them well, and they start coming up with all sorts of ideas. Today, after retrieving weapons from the military camp and returning late, I deliberately didn't bring back any food. It gave me the perfect excuse to put these increasingly presumptuous neighbors in their place. Just as expected, my empty-handed return triggered their complaints. Once the chatter had risen to a certain level, I laid down the law. "Don't forget who's in charge here. You're stepping out of line." The tension hit them like a slap to the face. They might have forgotten the terror Chen Zhenghao used to instill, but I, Zhang Yi, am 100 times the man he ever was. "Now let's call it a night. Go back to your rooms," I announced, waving them off. Right then, a man in a red beanie stepped forward. "Brother Zhang, it's too much to let you shoulder this responsibility alone all the time. Next trip, why not let a few of us come along? Your snowmobile looks roomy enough for 3 people." I glanced at him out of the corner of my eye. His hand was suspiciously tucked behind his back, and there was something off about the gleam in his eyes. Then I noticed a few people behind him starting to chime in. "Yeah, we're happy to help carry supplies, Zhang. You just let us know, and we'll do whatever you need." The atmosphere turned sour. Slipping my hand into my pocket, I tightened my grip on the cold steel of my pistol. "Oh right, how could I forget?" I sneered. "You've been eyeing my snowmobile this whole time." "Well then," I said with an eerie calm, "let's end this charade." Before anyone could react, I swiftly raised my gun and fired. Bang! The man in the red beanie fell lifelessly to the ground. Gasps and screams erupted from the group. "You thought I was negotiating? The only thing you'll be doing around here is following orders. You think I need to remind you who holds the cards? Looks like you need a lesson on knowing your place. Don't ever forget, you owe everything to me, and I owe you nothing." Bang, bang, bang. I emptied the magazine, taking out 4 more on the spot. Terrified screams filled the night as the remaining neighbors fled in panic. In the midst of it all, Zhou Kuer finally emerged from the shadows. concern written all over her face. She asked cautiously, "Brother Zhangyi, you've been gone for 2 days. Are you hurt at all?" I said I was fine, gave her a knowing look, and then turned without another word, heading straight back to my own house. Zhou Kuer immediately understood and followed behind me. After chatting briefly with her, I asked, "Anything new in the neighborhood these past 2 days?" While giving me a foot massage, Zhou Kuer began filling me in on everything. That Granny Lin, ever since her grandson died, she's completely lost her mind. Yesterday, she even stabbed a young mother to death. The neighbors ended up teaming up to take care of her permanently. And one more thing, Building 9's current boss is someone who used to be one of my patients. Her name is Chunlingyu. Today, she contacted me and asked if I could help connect her with you. She said she has something important to discuss. Hearing this, I furrowed my brows slightly. Chunlingyu, what could she want to talk to me about? To be honest, the idea of going up against tens of thousands of people in this entire residential area makes me uneasy. If they really united and formed a single front, how likely is it that they could forcibly demolish our Building 25? At this stage, I have to seriously consider the possibility. If they were to rally everyone to tear down our building, it's not entirely out of the question. However, with only 1 hour of low-power electricity being supplied to the neighborhood each day, they wouldn't be able to use electric drills or impact hammers, those kinds of large-scale tools. Tearing down an entire building manually, in this harsh and frozen apocalyptic environment, would practically be an impossible task. But just now, Zhou Kuer told me that Chun Lingyu, who's in charge of Building 9, wants to work with me. Upon hearing that, I couldn't help but chuckle coldly. In this era, who even qualifies to discuss working with me? I lack nothing, and everyone else. They're either starving to death or standing on the brink of freezing to death. Work with me? Are they even worthy? Seeing my reaction, Zhou Kuer said, "In that case, I'll decline her for you." I thought it over, no need for that. First, help me gather more information about what's going on in their building. It never hurts to know more. Soon, Zhou Kuer began sharing the intel she had collected. Chun Lingyu is, without a doubt, a powerhouse of a woman. She once ran a beauty company estimated to be worth 20 million, though it's rumored to just be an empty shell for selling through social platforms. She's nearing 40, fairly attractive, with an incredibly strong personality and rather ruthless methods. I don't know her well. She's merely an old patient of mine. Right now, she and her team have taken full control of Building 9, managing it impressively. To date, only 7 or 8 people in their building have died. After hearing all this, even I couldn't help but be a bit impressed. For a single woman to maintain order in an entire building, she clearly knows what she's doing. That said, in apocalyptic times like these, the more capable someone seems, the more cautious you ought to be around them.